I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. It is Wednesday, October 27th, and this we will this meeting will be held. It's not here. This meeting will be recorded by video and audio in accordance with the open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings, such that an in-person meeting of the Gloucester School Committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. We're going to be going into an executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations, and we will come out of executive session around 7 o'clock, at which time we will have the public school committee meeting. So with that being said, I'll make a motion that school committee will meet in executive session pursuant to the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining with the GTA, GATE, Teamsters, and AFSCME. And then return to open session at approximately 7 p.m.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, Maria?
Mr. Cavazza.
Yes.
Chairman Poe.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
And Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So we are in executive session.
So yeah, we're not.
I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. It is, we've just come out of executive session. It is Wednesday, October 27th. We are here at the main office in at 2 Blackburn because they have consistent power as opposed to high schools, which is often on during the day. So this meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings, such that an in-person meeting of the Gloucester School Committee is not possible. The meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. Maria, do we have a roll call for attendance?
Kathy Clancy.
Here.
Mr. Cavazza.
Here.
Chairman Poe.
Here.
Ms. Prince.
Here.
Mayor Taken.
Here, at City Hall.
Ms. Watson.
Here.
And Ms. Weason.
Here.
So the entire school committee is in attendance. And we'll move on to the first order of business. We were going to skip over the salute to the flag on account of we don't have flag. And we're in the office. And we'll open up oral communications. Oral communications, the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter will be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of the prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. So that being said, I am going to open oral communications. We have one person with a hand up, Pamela Steele. Pam. More in a second.
Hi, thank you, Jonathan. I'm not sure that I can ask this, but I would like to try. I would like to know if you could tell me the process of how you're going to vote on that preschool location. And is there a committee, a subcommittee, who decides? And do you have like a spreadsheet that says the good and the bad and things like that, like you did for the schools?
At our last meeting, I can't remember if it was BNF or here, we went through a list of information that we wanted to take under consideration so that we could make a recommendation. Ultimately, it will be the city's decision. It's not our decision of what we do. The schools won't own the buildings. The city owns all the buildings. We can make a request to the city. So that's what the process will be, is that we'll gather as much information as we can, and we will debate the pros and cons of the different options, and we will vote and make a recommendation to the city, and then the city will take it under advisement.
Can I just add, a couple?
Sure.
So just quickly, Steele and everyone listening, is that this is not a short-term process. This isn't the next month, or it's 3-6 months, maybe perhaps longer than that. The school committee is very helpful in identifying a whole bunch of information they would want to have in order to make a sound long-term decision. So I just want to assure everyone, both in the room, but also listening, that this will be a longer process. This is not in the next 4 to 6 weeks. It is literally could be that many months.
Can I have one more question?
Go right ahead, Pam.
Is it, what's the time frame? And will there be input from the community or not?
The timeframe basically is where we have a lease with the owner of the building, and it is renewable, I think, for the next
We have 2 more years on it.
two more years on this lease, but we can get out of it at the end of any of those years. And so the time frame is, I think we would like to have a recommendation to the city sometime in the spring. So they could make their decision as to what they would like to do.
Thank you.
And as far as input from the community, we will take input. I don't know that we'll have a public hearing on it, but should the city decide to either do something that required bonding, which required a capital outlay, then there would have to be a public hearing at the city council to approve the bond issue.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to speak under oral communication? Okay, Matt Doherty.
Hi, guys. How you doing this evening? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm new to these school committee meetings, and generally, are they held in open public forums, or are they usually Zoom meetings like this?
Well, they always were open public forums until COVID, and because we couldn't do it in public, in person public. We're always doing it public, technically, and this satisfies the state. The way we're doing it now satisfies the state law. As we are meeting together, and it is our hope and goal when we can safely have large gatherings in auditoriums, that we can invite the public in person. But we do, what we're doing now with Zoom does satisfy the open meeting law. I don't know if that answers your question. Our goal is to get back to that in-person meeting with everybody.
But not to ditch Zoom.
But not to ditch Zoom.
We have a lot more attendees.
Right, we have found that the participation from the community is much greater since we've been able to do Zoom meetings. And we think that in general, that's a good thing. Well, we don't know. We haven't made a decision. We are, you know, for the city, the school committee is doing this hybrid model. As you know, the city council is still meeting solely by Zoom.
Can that be put up to a vote, or is it just gonna stay like this till a certain time frame, or is it like a public, a numbers kind of thing? If there's a certain amount of numbers, then it's not gonna happen, or it will happen, or
We follow-
something like that?
You know, we try to follow the best advice we can get from the health department and the state and guidelines from the state. So you know, we're not medical experts, anybody sitting at this table, so we depend on advice and try to weigh that advice as well as we can.
We also can't limit how many people can come in.
Right.
So that's kind of the problem.
Yeah, if we open it up to in-person attendance, we can't say we can only have 50 people or we can only have 10 people. We have to open it up. So we have to be able to accommodate that. And right now, as you know, the guidelines in the city is everybody in a public building has to be masked, and we would have to enforce that somehow, which we're really not set up to do. So we'd love to be there, but like I say, it's, you know, it's not going to just be a vote of the number of people. It will be you know, based on the best advice that we can get.
And you're taking your advice from local health boards and the state health board?
Yes, as well as the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about certain things. So we look at all the people that are telling us what to do, and which are many, including the public.
But I think just to make, you know, unless I have this wrong, to make clear for a lot of people watching tonight, even if it came to the point where meetings were required to be in person to participate, I still think we're looking to supplement the way we used to tape our meetings and broadcast them days later with continuing at least a live feed so that people at home, even when we're back fully in person, can still watch from home in real time, even if the entire meeting must be conducted in a physical place. So I don't want anyone out there thinking that because we have a stated preference to get back in person when we can, that we're gonna cut the cord and not let people at home with families still watch the meeting. That'll continue.
It just depends if they can participate if the
Right.
state continues the open meeting law. the way
Right.
it is.
But at least viewership will be a lot, you know.
I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Okay, we have Mary Ann Boucher.
Hi, Mary Ann Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. I just wanted to piggyback on what Joel just said. I'm curious to know, are you using the new technical or technology that you said that you were going to purchase for these events? Are you currently using that now? And if so, I would highly encourage you to stay in a hybrid model for people who are unable to attend these meetings. You know, you're all elected officials and you're representing not only the children and the students and staff of the schools, but you're representing the people and the citizens who care very much, as I do, about those, the children and staff of the schools. And I would highly encourage you to continue with a hybrid model that only will help everybody in the city to understand some of the meetings. We can read in the newspapers, we can, you know, read the articles, but seeing and listening to all of you gives a really clear perspective as to what goes on in each of these meetings. And I know that I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. We are using that equipment. There's a camera here that shows the table and all of us. That is the equipment, as well as the fact that there's a microphone. We don't, everything when you hear us speak, it's because it's being picked up by a microphone, not our computers, although, we have our computers on so that you can see our faces, but we're not communicating through that, or at least our masked faces. So we have every intention to continue with the access, regardless of whether the public is coming in to our meetings or not. I think that I think we're very happy with the results and the number of people. We've had meetings with which would fill the largest auditorium in the city with the participation of the community. So that's never been achievable, in our form of doing business. So I think this is here to stay. Okay, anything else? Anybody else? No more communications. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close oral communications, and we will move on to our next order of business, which is comments from the chairperson. We will skip over that in a moment, and we will go to our Ross High School Student Advisory Council. Who do we have? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Nato and
Jenna,
Jenna Smith.
welcome.
Hello. How are you guys doing tonight? Okay, I have a lot to unload on you right now. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So tomorrow, Think Pink is like a spirit day in school for breast cancer awareness. We sold shirts earlier in the month for like breast cancer awareness. So tomorrow's Think Pink, we're going to take a whole picture with everyone in the shape of the ribbon. Like we do every year, that's going to be fun. On Friday, we are doing our rescheduled outdoor pep rally, which Nate and I are actually the host of, which is going to be incredible. And since we had the gas leak last week or 2 weeks ago, we have to reschedule it. So that's on Friday. So that's going to be really fun. Saturday at 1:00, we have our football game. It's the last football game, so it's going to be senior night, and it's also Halloween themed. So if any of you go there, wear orange and black, support the team, support the seniors. It'll be fun. At our last home football game, we crowned our homecoming king and queen, and that was Aiden Donald and Kiara O'Connor. They are dating. They've been dating since 8th grade, so they've been together all of high school. So it was really cool for them to be homecoming king and queen. Our semi-formal is on Monday. At 4:30, we're gonna have a photo area set up. It's gonna be decorated with like pumpkins and all this fall stuff. So anyone's welcome to go and take pictures with anyone who is going to the semi-formal, and it'll be really fun and cute. There's gonna be a photographer there. Student council began selling their Thanksgiving baskets with the open door. It's $30 per basket, $30 feeds a family for Thanksgiving. Last year we were able to get together 75 baskets. This year we only are at 16 right now, but it's still early. So we're gonna keep building on it, and hopefully we're gonna beat the 75, which I am confident that we will. NHS tutoring, it's been going on all year. With the end of the term coming up on November 4th, it's been ramping up a lot. A lot of more students are looking for tutors, which is awesome. Helps me get my hours in, helps a lot of other students get their hours in. It's great. It's available every day. So if you have a child or cousin or someone you know at the high school, tell them to get on it. Do NHS tutoring. It helps out them and it helps out the NHS community. So for the yearbook, the seniors voted on our superlatives. Those are really fun. I know that Nate is in the running of a couple of them. I think that one of them is most likely to be a celebrity. So
And biggest ego too. That's up there as well.
biggest ego, you got that one. So he's in the running for those two. I'm in the running for life of the party. It's great. It was very fun to vote for our friends, all that. On election day, the junior class is going to be holding a bake sale outside of GH. I believe it's outside. Might be inside. I'm not sure. They're having a bake sale all day. So if you go and vote at GHS, buy a baked goods for your junior class. They'll taste good. You'll be happy. They'll be happy. It works out for everyone. And finally, NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges, came to do like a review on GHS. I don't believe it was last week. I think it was the week before. But basically, they were just going in and out of classrooms, and they were all virtual. So like, I know Mr. Francis did it. He had like a big iPad, and the NEASC board or person would just like watch over the classroom. But not only did they do like in classroom reviews, they interviewed a bunch of like students. And I know that engineering did it, a bunch of like the core classes like English, history, math, science, they all got interviewed by students got interviewed in those subjects. Then there's also like arts and vocational things. I got interviewed for cabinet design, which was awesome because I got to tell someone about things that I've learned over the past 2 years. And it was just really cool. That went really well. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Okay, that's a lot. Any questions? Melissa?
Hi, can you tell me if we wanted to buy one of the open door baskets, how do we do that?
I believe you can just donate money. I don't think you can buy a basket. Nate, do you know for sure?
Yeah, we donate. I just want, if I want to donate, how do I do that?
I think you should. There's a teacher at GHS who's kind of surrounding themselves in it. Miss Menery. I believe her email is rmenery@gloucesterschools.com. I believe she has more information. I would love to tell you, but I think she has forms for it.
Yeah, she definitely has forms for it. So if you contact her, she'll be able to set you up right away.
She can help.
Thank you.
Joel?
Is Interact still hosting that trivia night?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm actually tri-president of the Interact Club this year. And November 4th, we are having the trivia night in the GHS cafeteria. It's 4 people per team, $40 per team, so $10 per head. And it's going to be so much fun. I would recommend all of you guys to get a team of 4 people. It's going to be so much fun. Definitely go.
I'll be
And
in it.
what?
I'll be in it. Me and my friends are going to be in it. So
Oh, you're going to be doing it?
yes, we of
Okay,
course.
so please compete and go against Nate. Please. Yeah.
So
And also, we have the chorus and band have the Coffee Fall House. Wait, was that supposed to be tonight?
That's tomorrow. Yeah. And
Okay,
so
tomorrow. So today's Wednesday.
in the cafeteria at GHS at 7:30, the band and the chorus are going to have like a coffee house with snacks and music.
So that's another thing you can go to. There's a lot going on right now. It's awesome.
Okay. Kathy?
Sorry to bring it back to something a little less fun, but I'm curious what subjects are most requested for tutoring?
A lot of the language courses, I think.
Yes, definitely Spanish and Italian.
Yeah,
don't know
those
about
are huge.
Yeah.
And like math too, I guess. That's another big one. I'm
Yes.
looking for a math tutor, so I mean.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else? It was good to see you all, and you're welcome to stay.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.
So we'll move on to our next order of business. Which I believe is the consent agenda. So are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to move for further discussion? Joel?
I just want to pull the 2 field trips out.
Okay. Anything else? or you want to talk about them both at once, or do you want to
Yeah,
talk about?
should we approve the consent with the things we'll remove and then talk? Or how do we do
We
it?
can do either. We can approve it without it and then approve them individually, or we can
Put them back
address
in?
with what you want to do with it.
Sure, so I'm looking, one's a trip into Boston for DECA, and one's a trip out to Pennsylvania for the drill team, actually, is it the drill team or is it the rifle team? Is it- I missed-
Looks like that was marksmanship.
Marksmanship.
Rifle team, okay. So I'm just curious whether, in this world of COVID, whether any other considerations, any precautions, these are fairly routine trips, I think that at least the rifle team makes every year. DECA, I don't know, they're always in Boston, like DECA sometimes gets on a plane, but anyway, are there any other considerations that we as a committee should be thinking about? Seeing as this, the first time releasing students back across state lines or across city lines for field trips in a world of an ongoing pandemic, we're sending one to, a large city, and into a big hotel, we're sending another group across state lines, 760 miles away. Just thought we should at least, I'm not putting my thumb on the scale here, I just thought we should probably discuss as a committee briefly. If we have any concerns or any.
Well, I'm just looking at the. Well, one assumes, and I don't see any reference to this, that the protocols will be followed.
Like whether in that van for 761 miles, they mask the entire van ride because they're students in a closed transportation, school sponsored.
They should be, and windows should be open.
So like, that's not on this form anywhere. Again, not faulting the form, it's an old form.
Yeah, so I have full confidence in the staff supervisors of both of these groups to, just like as we have had with our athletics and performing arts and sort of thing. Especially when it's a contained group, you have eyes on kids, and then also, there are real consequences leading up to it, if not abiding by the group's rules or the school rules. So, limited number of folks, a good, just really good supervision. And I think that's what is necessary. The protocols aren't any different than they are here. And that's, I'm sure, I'll make sure that, Principal Cook is working with staff members to understand that. But there shouldn't be any change in that confidence these folks can do.
So it makes sense just put a request in that admin sends these two staff members, a quick little, email saying, hey, don't forget on the trip, following protocols applying.
And both of these requests are signed off by the school nurses. We assume that- looking at the protocols that are in place.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, we're gonna put the feedback in. Right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and it will include the field trips, which we brought out for discussion. Maria, do we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
It carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next order of business, which is our deliberations on educational issues. And we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Okay, folks, we're gonna do things in this order, I believe. I'll give a brief update on some things that are happening in our schools. And then we will move into some capital planning, related to modules and other things. And then we'll pull in Brian LaFata to talk about winter athletics, actually fall athletics and winter athletics. So let me pull the presentation. Do it in that order.
For some reason, we're not up on that screen.
No.
That's simple.
But you, yeah. So again, as we continue to be the whole year, our primary objective is safely educating all students in our schools every day to maximize learning, address our students' full needs, and support community and family needs. Lots of good news happening always in our schools, but I'm going to highlight a few things which are a little bit out of the ordinary to some degree. First, the East Gloucester School Vets groundbreaking happened last week, October 21st, so last Thursday. A really great celebration on a perfectly wonderful sunny day, quite a bit unlike today. The mayor and city councilors and the school committee members, building committee members were there. They hosted the third graders from East Gloucester and Vets, our honored guests, who were just fabulous. You can see a few photos here. On the top, you see them with two banners they made, one thanking Gloucester, and the other thanking the MSBA. No one climbed on that giant digger, thank goodness, although a few of them and a superintendent were interested in doing it. Down below on the left, you see, I just want to just pause for a moment and just thank the East Gloucester and veterans teachers of the third graders and their staff there. Thank you to Principal Fusco and Principal Pasquarello. The kids were fabulous. They were well organized, well prepared. They organized, the students rather, wrote letters. East Gloucester's third grader students wrote letters to veterans, students, and vice versa. They exchanged those letters during the groundbreaking ceremony. These are the students who, of course, 2 years from now will be the fifth graders at the new building, at the new school. And on the right there, I couldn't figure out how to load the video, but they did a song together, which was from the White Stripes. I forget the name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna be friends.
Yep. Great. We're gonna be friends, exactly right.
I've never felt older in my life.
So, but they did a fabulous job. The teachers prepared them so well. They sang out loud, sang out strong. The MSBA was represented by Jim McDonald there. We were in a meeting with him today with about 150 other people. Now, I'll get to that in a moment, but he went out of his way to extend thanks for such a wonderful groundbreaking ceremony. He called out the students and how well they did in front of, like I said, 150 people. But it really seemed to me that it was he's been to a lot of these. Jim McDonald's been to a lot of groundbreaking ceremonies, but he, I think, was particularly moved by this one. And I think it's because our students were there and they did a fantastic job. So it was a great, great day, and we're really making progress there. So that's one great thing. A second here. The NEASC visit, a little of my thunder was stolen a little bit here by Jenna, but no problems at all with that. The NEASC visit is a 3-day visit last week, 3-day, and then the kind of 4th day as well, where they did some reporting. It was the next step in the decennial accreditation process that we go through across 10 years. It was a follow-up to the collaborative conference visit and the report from October 2018. This is an assessment and review of the progress made on the recommendations they gave us on the priority growth areas. This visit was in person and virtual. They had one person here, and then they had other folks, as Jan said, participating virtually. The visit was very complex and complicated. Really appreciate Rich Francis, Dave DiPietro, Principal Cook, Assistant Principals Alison Alves and Chris Cobbs, and many others who I'm not sure of or I'm not aware of, but a lot of folks helping out in so many ways organize this visit and really just present the work that the high school has been doing on so many levels. 5 rounds of classroom visits, student group meetings, as they talked about, exhibition of student work, meetings with student support teams, school committee members, a few folks were there, myself and Greg Bach, the site-based council, just a lot of very, very close look at the work that high school has been doing. Here are some photos you see in the upper left corner, Rich Francis there, supporting a group of young women. They were presenting, this is during one of the student exhibits of work. They were presenting science projects they've been doing. On the right-hand side, you see a young gentleman working on his robotics demonstration. He was then talking on the lower left there. You see Dave DiPietro there. They're being interviewed by one of the NEASC review team members. And then on the right-hand side, 2 groups of students were presenting there. The group whose backs are to us were presenting about their, I think it was a cabinet making they were doing in Voc Tech. So, and they're talking about a lot of woodworking aspects that Mr. Pope probably would understand, but I didn't really get them. But they're talking about different joints they're making, and the biscuit they were using to join the different pieces of wood, and just really doing a very hands-on visual demonstration. So nice work on that from the students, which I was able to visit and see. Another thing, and this is part of the visit kind of, but not really, Emily Harney's classes had put out some of their digital photography outside the room there, and I walked by and I was speaking with her a little bit, visiting with Miss Harney. I walked out, I walked back in, I'm like, whose photos are those? Really student photos? Because they're really just, you can just get a little bit here, but they're just fabulous. Fabulous artwork, fabulous production, fabulous quality, just great, visuals and eyes that our students are producing in the digital photography class. Part of which was actually, as everyone knows, was rebuilt essentially this year with brand new computers donated by GEF. So just a great collaboration there, but students producing fabulous work. And then the last piece about the NEASC visit is where we go from here. So the initial findings were presented to the faculty on Wednesday, October 20th. And really the team just strongly encouraged the school to continue with the implementation of their actions in the priority areas. They commended GHS, its leadership and staff for its focus and direction. You have all heard me talk about having a clear direction and keeping that focus. And the high school has been doing that in very, very difficult times on their work on instruction, on their work on supporting students, on their work on supporting the mental health and social emotional support of students, creating strong connections with students, and really working on their curriculum, working development, working on their instructional approaches. And the NEASC team saw that and commended them for continuing to stick with that. The completion of the final report will happen in somewhere up to 2 months. At that point, the NEASC commission votes on whether we're accredited or not. We are very confident we will be. And then the final report, when it's finished, will be presented to the school committee and distributed broadly. And then it's an ongoing process of continuing to report out to NEASC and also reporting out to us as well. As you remember from when Principal Cook gave a really good presentation, really strong presentation about the school improvement process at GHS, is that they are utilizing the same priority areas for the sustainable improvement work with the State Department of Education and the NEASC. They're aligned in the same thing. And so we'll continue to, he and his team will continue to focus on that work and that very solid direction. And we'll continue to report to you on our progress in there. So that took a lot of work from the high school team in very, very difficult times to get that all organized and pulled off so nicely. The reason we were on a phone call with the Mass School Building Authority today was that today the city was invited to participate in their accelerated repair program to replace O'Malley's windows. O'Malley has that's a big deal for us. The O'Malley still has their original windows. They are single pane windows, which make things colder in the winter and hotter in the summer, or hotter in the warm months. And so we will now begin the process with them, with MSBA on replacing those. We don't have a timeline quite yet. We'll get more details in the coming weeks, which we'll report back to you just in terms of process, which as all of you know, and the public should know, they have a very defined, clear process that you stick with, really no matter what, but we'll give you more information on that. But I will say that I stand corrected. When I came to you in the city council in the springtime, I said we should start applying for the accelerated repair program. It's unlikely we'll get in on the first try. And sure enough, with some great support from Senator Tarr and Rep. Fronte and others, we've accepted. That's great news.
Joel?
So I'm very grateful for the past, present, and continuing support of the MSBA. I like the mayor was able to remind the representative at the groundbreaking that, hey, we're not quite done yet. I would just like to keep on top of mind that what I would really love is in the not distant future, we ask the MSBA for something and they look at our buildings and go, no, those are pretty good. And there's a lot of other cities who need this money more than you do. Because there's the other side of this, they keep looking at our city going, oh yeah, no, you need this the most. Here you go. Yeah, first year, come on in. I'm so sorry, Gloucester, come on in, get under the umbrella, you know? And so I'm hoping that when they get us reset and righted here with our buildings, that we can not fall into a position where they continue to come and go, oh my goodness, Gloucester, you need all the money. They go, oh no, Gloucester, you're doing a good job. Those things are in good shape. Good work. Enjoy them. We're gonna go to the needier communities, which are no longer you. That's like my long-term ask and dream for the city.
Wait, are you asking us to maintain this?
Yes.
So no, I will say this, what they have said again and again, and I think you heard this yourself, is they really do enjoy working with Gloucester. Not because we're needy, but because we do a good job and we're clear to them and just really help them move through the process. So, but the point is well taken. A couple more things. English, we're hosting English language learner family coffee hours. So Christine Castle, whose office we're sitting in right now, and Augustina Parsons, who had been a tutor and for bilingual tutor for our schools for the last few years, is now our as of this summer newly hired K-8 English language learner family liaison. And she and Chris have been hosting coffee hours at each elementary school for our English language learner families. Done quite extensive outreach. We're having 5 to 8 families at each coffee hour. For our first time doing that, that's a good start. And you can see some of the discussion topics here. Quite a good range that have been coming up. What does it mean to be an English language learner in our schools? Helping families understand that, what that means. Helping them understand the importance of school attendance. Helping them learn about accessing volunteer opportunities in our school. Really becoming a part of the community through that. Really discussing the gift of being bilingual and what an advantage of that is in our society, both with employment opportunities and other ways. So you'll see a whole variety of discussion topics. So going well, we're in the process of scheduling coffee just like this at O'Malley and THS as well. So, well,
So 2 questions. What is the name of the person who's in charge?
Augustina Parsons.
Great. And are these coffees happening after school? Like, what is the timing?
During school day?
During
Yeah,
school day?
during school day.
And do we help at all with transport to the schools?
I don't know. I'm not transport. We do have Spanish and Portuguese translators at all costs.
How are we adjusting the other languages?
Our English language, our EL teachers
Yeah.
do, and others do that every day.
Okay.
We, in terms of communicating with families, as you may remember, we have more capacity to do real-time translation through Language Line,
Okay.
which is app-based, iPad-based app that we do. And then I've also now have a 9 through 12 English language learner liaison at the high school. That's been a position we've sort of pieced together over the last few years and have finally created one piece. So that's been helpful as well. And that new staff member is bilingual as well. I don't know how we work with students who don't speak other languages. I'm not trained that way, but I know our English language learner teachers do really understand how to break things down, how to structure things, how to communicate, and how to make kids engage quickly with our schoolwork, and also with the school community. So then on to the CODA. I'm gonna hold the CODA update for a little bit, so because we have some guests here. Joe Lucido, first of all, from Department of Public Works, and then Brian Lafada, athletic director, and I'll come back to this. We have a fair bit of good news here, but want to make sure that we're giving time for Lafada and Joe Lucido. That sounds okay. Any other questions before I skip off to that? Okay. Joe, good to see you. I'm going to just start us off, Joe, and then you can chime in, and then we'll let you go to bed. Because I know you've been up for all hours today. Let me just show a presentation here quickly, just to get us going. Good. So what we're going to talk about today a little bit, and Joe Lucido will help us with some of this, is some capital improvements that we're going to be working on spring, summer of 2022. I mentioned to you about the O'Malley replacing windows, so we already covered that. Bema, Plum Cove, and then the GHS locker replacement. Want to just give an introduction to Joe, because Joe will help us help you talk through and discuss the report that you've been given about the Beam Elementary School and Plum Cove Elementary School modulars. Before we get to that, though, the bigger picture here is that our primary goal of these two schools is to ensure that both facilities remain viable for at least 10 years. But that's the time frame we'll be able to pursue the next step of those schools. We don't know yet if that's individual schools being rebuilt or a combined school. That will be a process out, years out. But we do want to make sure
Didn't
that
you vote on that back in 15?
We did.
Yeah, it's going down to 3 elementary schools. We voted on this as the third committee.
But the
Okay.
next committee can change it.
Sure.
a lot can happen the next 5 or 6 years, okay? And so, but in order to get to that time frame when the city can take on rebuilding school or schools, we're gonna have to maintain both these two schools. And that means addressing the modulars in the short term, and then in this year and the upcoming years, ongoing repair and maintenance, continue that, and then also address safety and accessibility. So tonight we'll talk about actually each one of these. I'm gonna just cut to the chase on modular renovation and replacement to give you the summary, and then Joe will help us understand some of these details. So in June, the school committee requested that we look into, we meaning our school department as well as DPW, to look into renovation and replacement and figure out which would be the most cost-effective approach. DPW has done the work with outside project manager to have that study, and Joe will be talking about that tonight. You'll see here the estimated cost of renovation is $3.1 million, estimated cost of replacement $7 million. Okay, the recommendation that we'll discuss tonight, but you won't vote on until next meeting, hopefully, is pursuing renovation. That allows us to achieve the objective of extending the life of the two schools. And the modulars, the modulars for at least 10 years. As you see here, substantially less than the cost of replacement, and it can be completed in the summer of 2022. So I won't go into any further detail on that. I'll let Joe help us understand more about that. Please can tell us a little bit more. Joe, thank you first of all for all your work, you and your colleagues in DPW all day for our schools today, but across the city. I know you guys have been going like gangbusters all night last night and into tonight. So just want to first thank you for everything you guys are doing. But I appreciate it. Everyone here appreciates it, and I'm sure the city certainly appreciates it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. We're coming up on almost a 24-hour shift for me, so the eyelids are getting a little heavy, but we'll get through this. So we, in the course of the regular meetings we've had, we've discussed the status of the modulars for quite some time now. We did bring in one of our project management companies that does quite a bit of work with us to take a kind of a first look at the modulars. And then based upon their recommendation, we actually brought in a vendor from Vanguard, who is probably one of the premier classroom modular manufacturers. They put together a nice little summary for us, which we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. The modulars were installed in 2008. Typically, a modular classroom's lifespan is about 15 years, and we're at about the 13-year mark. And these modulars are, in fact, showing their age. We're starting to get some water infiltration through some of the roofing structures and some flashing windows. So, we definitely need to make a move in one way, shape, or form within the next year or so. As Superintendent Lummis pointed out, there are two options on the table. One of them would be to renovate. Second would be to replace in place. And the quickest and cheapest, which will buy us just about 10 years, would be the renovation. And as far as the renovation is concerned, what we would do is basically peel the skin of the modular off. In the report, it is noted that the interior of these modulars are in very good shape. They've worn very well. And that's, in part to the occupants have been taking care of them, and our custodial staff has taken great pride in them as well. But when we talk about taking the skin, we're talking about replacing roofs, siding, selective doors. It looks like we'll be able to reuse some of the windows. We'd also be replacing the ventilation system. So the rooftop units that provide heating and air conditioning would be removed and replaced. And that is something that could be achieved in a short time frame. So if we were to get approval to move forward, this would potentially go out to bid late fall. It would bid early January. And, we would be looking at construction starting, the day that school got out. If we were to go to a replacement, it gets a little more tricky because we would be looking to use the existing foundation, the existing tie-ins to the buildings. And at that point, with supply the way it is right now, we'd be at the mercy of multiple different vendors. Timing would have to be impeccable, and it wouldn't be something that we'd be able to do for this coming summer coming up. So it'd push us out to the summer of 23. So basically, our recommendation, and unfortunately, the initial numbers that were in the report were construction numbers only. There are some soft costs built in. So the renovation option is actually closer to 3.5 million, and the replacement is closer to 8 million, 8.5 million. So there's about $1 million in the renovation and soft costs, and almost $1.8 million in the new version. Soft costs are typically about 30%. But we feel very confident that if we can get the support of the school committee and city council, and we can get the funding in place, that we would be able to achieve this renovation this coming summer. So we'd be ready to open up in the fall of this year.
Any questions? Melissa?
Hey, Joe, thank you so much for staying awake for us tonight. Appreciate it. If there's anything you can do to get Paula back on Magnolia quicker, that would be awesome.
Why are we distracting him tonight?
A lot of us here have no power, so. So my question is, thank you for what you said. And looking through the report, I just have one question. So I like the timeline for the repair to get the work done as soon as school gets out, but in the meantime, there are some issues with the modulars. Can you tell me if there's any work being done to those modulars now? Like for instance, I don't have page numbers here, but it says modular skirt boards damage, which is a concern for pest control management. Is there any way to address issues like that sooner than a vote to either replace or repair?
Yeah, so basically our system is brought the modulars forward because we've been spending more and more time performing these smaller repairs. We've been working on rodent control over at Beaman. We have replaced and done a number of patches on the roofs at both locations. We've actually removed siding on at both locations as well, and have replaced plywood or the OSB board underneath. So we've been actively working on these for the past couple of years, and it's kind of what brought it to the forefront. We said, listen, we're getting to the point now where we've got to make a decision because we're spending way too much time and money making repairs to these, kind of the Band-Aids, rather than the big picture fix, which brought us to where we are today. So we continue to, respond and repair as necessary. But we're getting close to that point where it's going to be beyond our scope to be able to make these repairs.
Thank you. Appreciate the constant attention.
Laura?
Just a quick question. Can you remind me how many modulars there are at each school? If this is the cost to renovate?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything. Can you repeat the question? Because it's not coming out clearly.
Okay.
Look this way.
I'll try again. Can you just remind us how many modulars exist at each school right now?
Laura, your mic is off for some reason.
It's supposed to be on.
It's
Where's the
supposed to
mic
be
now?
off.
Maria.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So the question is for Joe, and I don't really, I can also get it, Joe, you don't have it. Is Joe, can you remind us how many modulars are each school at Beaman and Plum Cove?
I'm actually not 100% sure of the numbers.
It's in the report.
We can find out as we go. It's not a report.
I know the sense of Cove, I don't know. It was 6 and then 7.
If you guys, if you continue the conversation, we'll find out.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question of Ben, but I don't have it.
Okay, Joe, I'm gonna ask you to hang around for just a little bit longer. Because we have another issue that we need your input on.
Yeah,
And we'll do it next, yeah. But we're not going to vote on this tonight. We are going to vote at our next meeting on November 10th. In which we'll make a request to the city to proceed with whichever option we add. So this is just information, so we can move on to the next.
So Bobby has her hand up.
I have questions for Ben about modules.
Oh, yeah. You have a question?
Yeah, well, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about the modulars. We're talking about refurbishing them or replacing them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's look at this. We're done with, right now, combining schools. This is for Plum Cove and this is for Beaman, which needs to be done, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. So refurbishing lasts how long? And replacing, which is something that we are committed to, is because the children need, just like they need new schools, they also need something that's not going to be refurbished and cleaned and have not ventilation or have the new modulars or new tech things you need. We got to figure out how long it's going to be for each one. If you refurbish, is it a 10-year process and then we're going to do the whole thing all over again? Or is it the new ones where they last 20 years and it's the new ones? And don't forget that if you can't use the ESSER money or any other copy, whatever, it's a loan, which right now we got 20 million for 1.9. So what would we pay for the loan amount would be not even what you're paying for rent 1 month that where you are at the administration building. So to me it's a no brainer. It's when you refurbish, I hate that word refurbish, but can it be done properly? And what are we getting for it? And the cost of what, 3 million versus 7 to replace?
3.5 versus 8. 3.5 gets us 10 years. 8 would get us 15 years, maybe.
Maybe.
Well, these last ones made it about 13 before they got to where they are now.
Refurbishing can happen by next summer.
Right, refurbishing can be done so that next fall when they go to school, they're ready for them.
Okay, and then if we had to redo them and we're refurbished, so have you guys ever walked in one that was refurbished? Did we get any that were refurbished and it lasted 13 years? I mean, has anyone seen a refurbished one?
Well, I think that what he was saying was that the insides are actually in really good shape. So kudos to the custodians, the teachers and the students. The insides are good. It's just the stuff that keeps it weather tight, like the siding, the roofs.
Okay.
So
Correct.
it's excellent. I think Joe called it the skins, like they're gonna skin these things and replace the skin. But we've done a good job taking
That's
care
what
of.
the public needs to hear. That's what everyone needs to hear. Thank you. It's kind of hard hearing you guys. I know you have masks, you have to, in that little small place, but you can't hear because you're mumbling. So I just want to make sure. And since I am loud, thank you.
They're gonna look and function as they do now, except they're going to be weather tight and safe and in good shape.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go.
So my question is to Ben. So again, I wanted, we're gonna vote on the next meeting, right?
Mhm.
And so So first, I'm super appreciative of the work that was done, because like, you know, when we first started talking about replacing the modulars, I was so frustrated. I cannot believe we're gonna like be spending money on modulars. You know, it's just like absolute hair crossing, right? But one, like, I'm super happy to hear that we've done a good job, like that, like as the mayor said, the people should hear that we've done a good job taking care of the inside of these buildings. We can't prevent what the weather's done to the outside of those. We've actually done a good job taking care of these. That's teachers, that's students, that's custodians, that's excellent, right? I'm happy to hear that, because that you know, helps justify spending more money on these, you know. Oh, sorry, I'm talking about the meeting, right? I'm talking, sorry. So the other thing I want to point out that I raised last time is I mentioned, well, you know, we've got this space over at St. Anne's that Plum Cove would fit into, and I did the math tonight, and based on the $1.5 million, which gets the refurbished modulars ready for next fall and gives us 10 years, that would only buy us 6.5 years renting St. Anne's, and that wouldn't start, we were able to get them in there until 23 when veterans moved out. So it's actually, you're stretching the money better by refurbishing the Plum Cove modulars than by just closing Plum Cove down and putting them into St. Anne's, which is the last facility we just put some money into. And that was something I had asked to look at, and this numbers tonight allowed me to say, okay, it's actually more cost efficient, and they're getting a better school sooner, and it'll last longer for the money we're spending than to have them move into St. Anne's behind veterans. The only other thing I can't figure out, and like the last thing like get me to like the yes on this for the next meeting, and I think you probably have the data, I just can't distill it myself, is on the Beaman side of things. The Beaman's a little bit more expensive than Plum Cove is going to be. Again, just thinking of what we know from experience, we know the Beaman 5th grade would fit at O'Malley because the West Parish 5th grade fit at O'Malley. And we know that catchment areas can, you know, are likely to be modified when EG Vets comes online. There's a lot of there's a Beaman catchment area that is likely could be, you know, pulled into the new facility. And so just be curious to know, you know, to kind of justify the money we're gonna spend at Beaman instead, to show how much modular work would still be needed to be done if we went those, you know, I think some of this table would consider extreme routes of saying, okay, to save money, you know, we won't replace 3 modulars, we'll send 5th grade west to O'Malley, and we'll also, you know, cut out another modular or 2 by redistricting, you know, another 40 or 50 kids into EG Vets or something like that, right? You can show what that return is or what that return isn't. That would be the last, like, what if, as far as showing that really the best use. These are huge amounts of money, even though it's way less than replacing, it's still, you know, $3.5 million, right? And so I think it'd be really helpful to justify and say, okay, Plum Cove, clearly the cheapest, most effective solution is keeping them there, refurb those, don't send them to St. Anne's. It'd be great if we could also have Beaman, cutting Beaman up and you know, putting a pocket here and a pocket there, and keeping a core at a reduced size Beaman down to, like, you know, 2 classes per grade or something, wouldn't actually be any more cost effective than what we're trying to do. Or if it is slightly more cost effective, we could then justify, okay, you know, using a fake number, that'll save us $500,000. Is all that disruption worth $500,000? Probably not. It's not $5 million, it's not $15 million, right? You see what I'm trying to get at? It's just like that.
I do, yeah, yeah.
So anything you can shine on that for the next meeting, so we can really say we looked at every option, and this is not only the easiest, but it's actually the smartest use of our time and our money. You know, that really helps sell to people like me who hear like replacing modules or fixing modules and go like cross-eyed, go, okay, well, this actually isn't, like, you know, out of lack of imagination. This really is just the best route forward.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I
Sure.
get the request clear, which is moving the 5th grade class at Beaman to O'Malley, right?
Right.
And then reducing the size of Beaman by, in 2023, redistricting, so an X number of kids from Beaman are now in with EGSX.
How many modulars could you not have to replace or not have to repair if you made those steps? Again, I'm not saying this committee would even agree to regardless, but I think it'll be even more obvious that that might not be the right move when we see that, yeah, you can do that. It'll cause all this disruption and you'll only save X dollars, because we'll still have to fix all of this stuff with the modulars that remain.
Yep.
We can't delete all the modulars off of Beaman and just spread the kids out. We'd still be having several modulars that need to get repaired anyway.
Then you probably have to have some demolition costs.
Absolutely.
And then mitigation costs for.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do that again on that. Yep.
Mayor's
I
got-
have my hands up.
What, Mayor?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, we're talking, I'm so confused, okay? It's kind of hard. It's like, I need to get Joe back because we're not gonna have electricity until late tomorrow afternoon, people. So then you're gonna talk about schools, okay? I'm still here at City Hall, working around the clock, 3 hours of sleep myself, and you're confusing me. You're talking about shutting down a school, cutting down the school, working that. You just made a lot of people just text me saying, what the hell are you talking about? I thought you weren't merging, whatever. We're talking about modulars. We're talking about now, if we had a refurbished modulars, do we have to shut down any schools or change anything or do anything?
The aim here, in terms of what I spelled out in the very beginning, was how do you maintain these schools, 2 schools, as they are over the next 10, at least 10 years, okay? The
Okay,
assumption that we won't be able to replace them for at least 10 years, okay? We're building a school now. It takes a while to, to recover, and we're, coming off of debt.
if we fix them, repair them correctly and do it now, you'll have more than 10 years.
Well,
Okay.
for at least 10 years, okay? So that's a minimum, right? And in order to do that, we have to do a few things. The first one we're talking about is you definitely have to deal with the modulars. So as the school committee director has to do, look at, renovating, refurbishing, or replacing, all right? The work that DPW has done and Joe has presented to us tonight, shows some advantages on renovation and refurbishing. 1, less than half the cost. 2, a much more accelerated time frame. Those are 2 of the biggest ones, and also gives us the time frame we need, which is at least 10 years. So that's what we're getting at. But it's in order to preserve what I'm saying. Okay, it's in order to preserve those schools as they are for at least 10 more years. Okay. Mr. Vavaz just asked for some more information to sort of help him understand and help the committee understand that this analysis is thorough and wants to look at a few other things to bring back to the next meeting. So I'll bring some more information in answer to his questions related to some other pieces of, looking at the structure, the organization of the schools a little bit differently, specifically Beaman.
Can we also have a list of, so Joe can go, because it's going to be next meeting, you can find out how many modulars. It's going to be, let's say we're going to refurbish, but we've already refurbished a lot of things in the schools as it is, the main structures, the main Beaman, the main Plumco, like with the heating systems and everything else. So we need to look at what else needs to be done in those schools while we're refurbishing everything else, is to make it a sound structure. Because you know what, I don't want to, 10 years, we're saying 10 years, we got 13 years out of these ones. But you know what, everyone keeps saying, if you maintain, repair, and continue that maintaining repair, it lasts longer. We know that, okay? And we've been doing that. And the public needs to know that they've been working really hard on all the schools. We just had O'Malley today, and you all know about the windows. So what we need to do is figure out exactly what else is left in Palm Cove that needs to be repaired. And you know what, let's throw a little bit of something there, whether it's the outside playgrounds, whatever. Why don't we make a wish list, what really needs to be done, so we can actually say, you know what, by year 1, year 2, year 3, we're doing these things. So people will trust us again, and not thinking that already we're going to say, we're going to do this in 10 years, and we're already planned that we're going to merge schools again, and we're going to go through all of this again. So you know what, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. We need to keep these children in place, safe, a great school to continue to work for our teachers, and be able to work and know what they're going to have structures over their head. So if it's refurbishing because of roof and leaks and whatever, like Joel said, well, that's great. Because the fact is that we need to do that. And we need to do that also with O'Malley, because what good is it if we're not going to repair the rest? So that's just my opinion. I'm sorry, but we're exhausted. And Joe, if it's going to continue, I relieve you.
Wait, hold on. Before we're going to get a little more out of Joe, then we're going to go back to Beaman and Plum Cove, talk about things like just what you're describing here, Mayor. So Jonathan, you want to?
Okay, we need to take a vote on the proprietary items that were recommended out of the building committee to be included in the bid documents for the new school. We didn't have to do this for West Parish, but apparently MSBA is requiring this a vote from the school committee right now. So what we have before us is we need to make a motion that's going to be to recommend the proprietary items as recommended by the East Gloucester Veterans building committee on its meeting of October 14th. And so I was just hoping that Joe could explain some of the rationale behind what was picked as proprietary items. And because that essentially it's issues like alarm systems, et cetera, that would we will end up having to pay perhaps a little bit more for to get exactly what we want. If that's a good characterization, Joe. I think that's accurate. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the proprietary items. I'm having trouble. I'm catching it from Dan. I can't say it.
Sure.
Proprietary.
So obviously I am on the building committee, and you know, this is something that's newer to the process. And I think a lot of school districts that have multiple projects are doing this. And, you know, myself as the facilities director, by default as the assistant director of public works, you know, you're a landlord, you have 15 units. You want to have 15 of the same sinks, 15 of the same toilets, same light fixtures. You know, you want your plumber to be able to come in and say, okay, I have this whole slew of parts for these units, rather than having, you know, 6 different brand name units. As far as energy management systems, lighting control systems, and as I said, we went right down to plumbing fixtures. You know, we want to be able to carry all crane toilets or whatever they may be. So the city's plumber has a stockpile of parts on hand. We can go to the shelf and know that this flushometer is going to fit any toilet in any one of these schools. Alarm systems. We want our alarm technicians to be able to come in and say, I can take this board from this unit and I can interchange it with this school, or take it out of this zone control panel and move it into this one. For my technicians, they're learning one manufacturer, one unit, rather than having to learn 6 different units. And it is, unfortunately, there is a cost to that, but I think in the long run, there's a huge savings in that. And that's really in a nutshell, that's the rationale behind some of these proprietary items. Not everything is proprietary. You know, we wish we could, but of course that would drive the cost of the project up. So we were very careful in selecting which items we were going to request. And then the other piece of this is what they call basis of design, which gives them kind of the baseline of what we're looking for. There may be 1 or 2 products that fit into the category of basis of design, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that manufacturer, which it keeps it pretty close. So it's almost as good as having that exact thing. So there was some give and take, and you know, we had some debates and talked through it, and there are some things that you know, in the interest of keeping the cost down, that we did you know, we accepted basis of design rather than proprietary items. So hopefully that answers the question kind of in a nutshell.
Thanks, Joe. Is there any questions?
No, thanks, great, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And so do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the list of proprietary items for the East Gloucester Veterans Building Project. Second.
You've not heard, people. I'm getting things. Nobody can hear you.
Sorry, Mayor. I made a motion that we approve the proprietary list as presented for the building project. Second.
And it's moved and second. Is there any discussion?
I have discussion. We're just passing this to continue it and to understand what's going on, correct?
No.
We're going to have another meeting on this.
No, there's not going to be another meeting on this. This is we are going to approve this, and then the designers will include.
She thinks we're on the last thing still.
This is about the proprietary items for the bid documents for the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School.
Okay.
This is not about the modulars.
Well, I can't hear, so thank you.
This is, we need to vote this tonight. Because they're preparing the bid documents now and they need to go out so we can get bids and et cetera, keep things moving.
And this has already been reviewed fully by the building committee, by the school building committee, just so everyone knows. I think you know that, but-
Yeah.
Well, not everyone that's watching is on the building committee or actually have access to go. Thank you.
And note too, the information's in our packet tonight too, so we were able to look at it prior to this meeting now. So we're coming into this meeting tonight already aware of what we were voting on.
I know we are, but people are watching and saying, I can't hear. So I just want them to know too, so they don't think why we're having a meeting and it's not, everyone has access. That's all.
Got it.
Flexibility.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes?
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Does this need to be reconsidered to get out of the bid documents?
Um,
I move that we reconsider the vote on that last item.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion on the reconsideration?
Can you explain what we're doing?
We're, yeah,
It's a good question.
yeah.
So
So,
they can't be taken back.
so under normal circumstances, anything that's voted can be reconsidered if a person who voted in favor of it asks for reconsideration within 3 days.
Mhm.
So what we're doing now, and then it would have to come back at the next school committee meeting and we'd have to vote it again. So what we're doing is reconsidering it right now so that it can't, so it's a done deal tonight.
So we can go out. and
So,
vote.
so that it,
Got it.
so they can act on it tomorrow morning.
So a no vote indicates you'd like to keep the vote the way it was.
Right.
All right, we have this.
If you vote yes, that means you do want to reconsider it.
Okay, so a no vote means I don't want to
Exactly.
All right.
Yes, I do.
Is everybody clear on
We're
what we're
probably
doing?
doing it at like 12 o'clock at night,
Okay,
right?
we have a motion and a second, and is there any further discussion? Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
No.
Mr. Favazza,
No.
Chairman Pope,
No.
Ms. Prince,
No.
Mayor Taken,
No.
Ms. Watson,
No.
and Ms. Weason.
No.
Okay, the motion fails unanimously. Thank you very much.
Jonathan, can I wait, pause a second.
Do we don't need the full video. Can we bring the mic a little bit closer?
I was just trying
Oh,
to,
okay. I'm just.
I can't reach it.
Oh, sorry.
Joe, can you get that down?
Hey, everybody.
We're in a different room, everybody, so it's,
So
it's
let's
just
try
different.
and put it.
Power was only
So
on.
bear with us.
We're here just tonight because the high school power wasn't working well. So this is just for this night in this setting.
Can you hear us better now?
Yeah, they don't respond.
Well, Mayor,
Mayor can.
Texting them in.
Mine power was flicking on here too, so
No, but can you hear us better? Because we just moved.
I can now.
Okay.
I'll ask the people who are at, text me, hold on.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Joe.
One of them pens.
Thank you very, very much. You are free to go to do whatever else you're doing tonight.
Yeah. Sleep.
Thank
I
you,
hope.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Work on making.
Joe, thank you for everything you've done and please thank all the DPW workers for me, please. They're all out there. Thank you.
Just the latest update. So Gloucester High School power is back on 100%. Unfortunately, Beaman and Plum Cove are still offline.
And Joe, how about West Parish? Are you using West Parish?
West Parish is still offline, but we're on generator power, so we're 100% powered by the generator there.
But people in that neighborhood or anything else, nobody has power.
Correct, correct.
And there's no access to drive through for, on Essex Ave or 127 yet.
Trees down the ways.
They need to close school.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you all.
See you soon.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Okay,
Thank
now,
you. Thank you.
we're gonna go back to the capital.
Capital presentation.
Yeah.
Find it again, 1 second. You see that? Okay. So, I'm not, so we've already discussed on the modulars, but I'll just go through a few things here. You have this presentation with you. It's a summary of the presentation, the report that's in your packet. It just goes through what we've already discussed about timeline, costs. Joe did a nice job explaining the different pieces that would happen, would be improved with the renovation. The replacing here, just the cost there, the time frame. So I'll talk about next steps in a moment, but with the other place we're talking about, as the mayor was saying, we have to do ongoing repair and maintenance. Okay, so we would like to do some of that work every year. The next big piece that we'd like to do this summer would be the exterior painting. Of course, exterior painting on both schools helps preserve the exterior envelope, as we all know. And so this is something that we have mentioned to you and sort of put in the pipeline as early as last winter, and then brought up again as we were talking capital planning in the spring as well. So $85,000 to do the exterior painting of Plum Cove and $75,000 at Beaman. That's coming from DPW for us, okay? And then also ensuring the safety and accessibility, in this case for playgrounds. We have applied, as we explained to you and presented to you, through ESSER 3, we applied for $100,000 to rebuild the Plum Cove and Beaman playgrounds, okay? The next steps on the playgrounds is the superintendent and myself and Mr. Frisch are gonna meet with the Beaman PTO on November 3rd. The principal will work and begin the planning process with the PTO and staff at Plum Cove. We'll then create timelines for finalizing design, getting quotes and installation. The Beaman PTO has led a good process so far, or pretty far down the path on design and getting estimates and quotes. Mr. Frisch and I haven't met with them, so I wanted to get fully briefed on that and fully up to date on that. I've only had a phone call and some emails, and then I also want to make sure that well, that's been happening for a little while because of the pandemic. There are some younger families, K1, who haven't been part of the process yet, is my understanding, because they haven't been part of the school until recently. So I want to make sure they get some input as well. So, but again, kudos to Beaman PTO, specifically Amanda Pollock, for doing some great work on moving us forward there. And now we want to get Plum Cove caught up as well. But we'll create the time after meeting with them and working with Principal Jewett, we'll create timelines, and that's with the intention of doing that either in the springtime or the summertime. To redo a playground and talking to Mike Hale, it can be done relatively quickly, a couple of weeks perhaps, in terms of installing it. But just want to make sure we're doing that in a time frame that fits for the school, and whether they are okay with perhaps taking the playground offline for a couple of weeks during the school year. And that's just something we haven't had the conversation yet. So yeah, questions?
So my question is not about those two schools, it's about here. So it's my understanding we need some play equipment here as well, meaning here in this building for our preschool. Is there any way to incorporate that into the job, which might help in the cost of applying for playground equipment, buying more, better price?
Right. I think we can look at that. I'm hesitant. And that's why I want to keep moving, as we discussed last meeting, keep moving on decisions around here. I'm hesitant to, and not that you're asking this,
And I'm
to
not
put in-
expecting this, it's not.
Oh,
it's
yeah, let me
making
just
sense,
explain
but
my
we need
thinking
one
here.
too.
right. I'd be very hesitant to put this level
Still
of
2 years though.
this sort of dollars into playground here at a place for Lisa. And we should all be hesitant to do that. But you're not asking that, you're asking if we get some additional.
It's my understanding that this place needs some attention. I'm not saying exactly what the other two schools would have, because that's obviously a 10 to 12 year period at those schools, and we're unsure here, but
Yeah.
something here at the same time.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as we're working with either, I don't know how, with a company on these to look here as well. Director Anne Marie Jordan has done some looking at here and has done some pricing with at least one vendor. We have some sense on rebuilding here, but rebuilding here, he hasn't to do until we decide.
Right.
But you're not talking about rebuilding, you're talking about you getting some stuff to
Just
support. and help.
anything
Yeah.
to,
We haven't looked at that yet. We look at the bigger thing, so I think it makes sense as a helpful idea to sort of focus maybe a little bit here and go smaller.
exactly.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's very helpful. So next steps in terms of, we're thinking, think of being in Plum Cove, just to put the point on this. We want to go forward with recommending, I'm hoping you'll go forward on November 10th to recommend to the mayor and city council that we pursue funding for the painting and the modular renovation in 2022.
You want to tell the city council what they're gonna do too, like on us in this slide? You tell us what we're gonna do in this slide. you're gonna-
That's true, that is written that way, and was not the intention, but you would take a vote on whether or not to recommend. Thank you. So, but this is a time frame we're working on in order to keep pace with both, with the timeframe. Yeah, the timeframe. Yeah.
I have another question. So painting, in the past, the city, including the schools, has used people that are housed at correctional facilities to do painting.
Okay. You
And
know that?
yes, I believe not here, but we have schools that were painted that way.
I
don't know
can't hear.
in place, especially with COVID going on, but I just didn't know if that was an ability to see if it's still there, because we just paid for paint.
Oh, we didn't pay for labor.
Right.
So we'll work with, I don't know.
Something to
This-
think
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
out
but
there
yeah,
somewhere. in the world.
DPW will run this process.
Okay.
Once we make a recommendation, if the city, votes to identify the funding, between the city council, the
Because
mayor.
it's at a time schools wouldn't be open, correct?
Right, that's what I was assuming. So we'll look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a thought to save some money.
So that's where we're headed, November 10th being important meeting. One last thing is the locker replacements had started probably. I don't know, someone can help me with this, perhaps in 2018.
At
least Yeah.
4 years ago.
At least 3 years
You
ago,
got
right.
five, Gwen
At
was
least,
a
probably
freshman.
6.
Right.
So, wanting to finish this project, because it's important to finish things once you start them in general. And something again, that I presented to you as out there, something we want to move forward on, so believe in working with the city and DPW, that's something that we could identify funding for, and then potentially fit on a schedule. In working with GHS, is that some of them over vacation, and then the rest over the summertime, that sort of thing, but it's something that both DPW, working with the city mayor's team, and also ourselves have been wanting to complete. And there's a couple things here. One is they're better lockers and more usable for students. They're safer. Some are old,
You fit backpacks.
sharp edges. Yeah, they actually fit backpacks and things. And so improve functionality and also sort of improve safety as well. So
And the ones that have not been replaced are not used at all,
Yeah,
yeah,
not
Right.
at all.
they're the correct color.
new ones are correct color.
We redid the high school, but yellow and blue got in there somehow. I don't understand.
Or the old one too.
A lot of things went
Discount
wrong
rack.
with that renovation.
I'm seeking your
Clearance.
a decision from you to request the funds of the city. On November 10th. Okay. All right. Brian LaFada.
Oh, Brian,
Do that.
yes.
He's been waiting patiently. Thank you, Brian. So Brian, how you doing? Thanks for waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting.
At all.
If I pull the presentation.
Yeah. Was disappointed. I was really happy to make the big breakthrough announcement that the power's on at GHS, but Joe already made that. I was
Go, right?
dark for a while here.
Joe, just so you know, Joe, you're free and clear, buddy. You can go.
Good night. Go get some
Night, Jen.
sleep.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
He's just having a good time.
Just hanging out.
He's mellow.
Okay, it's good to hear. All right, so you may be ready for that, the athletic report.
Yeah. you
All
can
right,
see it.
Brian, why don't you begin, Brian, talking about our very successful fall season, why I rummage around my computer and find the presentation, okay?
Definitely. Well, thank you everyone for having me. We'll make it brief tonight. I know you guys have been here for a while already. Just a real quick overview of the fall season. We're just wrapping up the regular season this week for the majority of our fall sports. We did have 6 different sports take place this fall: soccer, football, field hockey, cheer, golf, and cross country. And between those 6 sports, it broke down to about 16 different levels, varsity, sub-varsity, and this year we did return to having O'Malley sports, which was great, getting the O'Malley kids back out there on the cross country and field hockey fields and courses. As you can see by the numbers on here, with all of these teams, it put us at about 250 student athletes for all the various levels. So about the same as what we have been in the past. We always continue trying to recruit more. The numbers with some of the lower classes, as far as freshmen and sophomores, we definitely see some good young athletes and some of their friends were trying to get out there to participate in multiple sports throughout the year. But overall, it was a very successful fall. As I said, we are wrapping up the regular season for the majority of sports this week. The cutoff date is on Sunday for some of the sports to make the MIAA tournament. We did have 3 of our varsity teams win their conference, the NEC South, or otherwise known as the Lynch Division now. Our boys soccer team, our golf team, and our boys cross country all won division conference titles. So that was exciting. After last year, the fall sports didn't have any awards or all-stars or anything. So it was great to have that. Next week, they will start having the all-star meetings. So maybe this is something in a few weeks, one of the upcoming meetings, we can recognize some of the all-stars and all conference athletes that have earned the recognition. The golf team, also to note, did win the Division III North Championship last week. And this next Tuesday, 6 of the players will be heading off to the state championship tournament. So it's pretty exciting for that team. Tyler Caniglieri, a teacher at the Gloucester High School, has done a tremendous job with a good group of 18 players on that team. And we're looking forward to seeing how they do next week. Cross country as well. As I mentioned, they won their league title this week. If you drive by Stage Fort Park either tomorrow afternoon or Saturday morning, you will see a good amount of runners out there. We are hosting the Northeastern Conference Championships again for all the schools because we're outside. We can space it out. Joe Lucido, Mark Cole, Mike Hale, and all of the DPW were great with letting us get back on Stage Fort Park and be able to conduct these races and have the kids participate. So again, all in all, it's been a great season. It's been great having a crowd again at some of the games. The last couple of weeks, we've had our senior nights for all the sports, having the student body there, the parents and in general public showing up at games. As Jenna Smith had said earlier, even one of the football games or a couple of the football games, we had tremendous crowds. The student body participating various dress up days have been tremendous. So it's felt a little bit more back to normal, not having to watch the kids run around on the field with masks and having a decent crowd in the stand supporting them. We are starting next week, the first official state tournaments. So every day it's something new for us right now as far as power rankings. There's a chance that I believe I mentioned at one of our meetings last year to give you the heads up that it's not a North sectional anymore, that in the first round, maybe our boys soccer team ends up playing Chicopee, Mass, or we have to travel to Martha's Vineyard or back or vice versa. They might have to come here. So over the next 7 days, it's going to be very interesting seeing how these power rankings by the MIAA work. Because you basically need a doctorate to figure out this equipment to get this. So it is a surprise every day for the coaches and players to see where they are ranked. As far as COVID touch base on that for the season, it's been a great season. When they do come indoors, all the student athletes and coaches are well aware they've got to put their masks back on. They've been doing their COVID screenings prior to practices, getting on the bus, just participating in games. We did have, before the season started, 2 cases that entered the season. So it didn't happen during the season. Were the only 2 cases we've had. We've had no COVID cases or any situations throughout the entire season with any student athletes. So that has been tremendous. There were a couple of weeks ago, some that were considered close contacts potentially. Those student athletes, all of them were vaccinated and also got tested right away and came back negative. So it's worked out very well the entire fall season with all student athletes and coaches as far as COVID. A couple of challenges that did come up this year, just to make you aware. It is national issues as well as locally, but it does affect Gloucester as well. One was transportation. Don't get me wrong, Adam Mayo has been unbelievable, and I'm not going to lie that I'm a little bit sad that he's leaving us very soon. For the past year and a half, he has been an unbelievable resource for me, battling through the COVID and transportation issues. He's been tremendous, but at the same time, it's been a challenge some days getting our teams to competitions, tea times, whatever it might be, on time. And it's as well for other schools in our conference in the area. Some days that teams are showing up after the time the game should have already started. And we do understand, obviously, the priority is within our district, we've got to get all the younger kids and all the kids from school home safely first before worrying about athletics. But hopefully some of the new bus drivers in the pipeline will help fix this problem a little bit in the future, because it has been quite a challenge this year, more than any other year since I've been here. The other challenge that is another nationwide situation is shortage of officials. As Jenna said, we do have a football game, a home game this Saturday. Typically we play on Friday nights, but we've been requested due to a lack of officials to move to a Saturday game time. And this has happened a little bit with various sports. It's not just one. I know nationwide people talk about hockey as one of those sports, but it's everywhere across the board. So I'm trying to do my best to reach out even in this community, people that know the sport, love the games, that want to get into it. But it is a challenge that we have been battling, and especially after this week with all the rain. It's been a great weather-wise season until this week. We've got to get a whole bunch of games in by Sunday, and with all the different schools competing, it's going to be quite a challenge. But again, all in all, it's been a tremendous fall season for all the teams, coaches, and staff. So Ben, if you want to go to the next slide. Now the important thing, just to start making you aware of, we have a little over a month until the winter season does begin. First official day of tryouts for sports is November 29th. It's always the first Monday after Thanksgiving. Sports we're planning on offering at the GHS level: basketball, obviously boys and girls, cheerleading, gymnastics, ice hockey, boys and girls teams, indoor track and field, swim and dive, and wrestling. We are hoping to have O'Malley sports as well back again, like we did for the fall after a year hiatus. We do offer basketball for boys and girls, separate teams, ice hockey at O'Malley, and there's the potential 8th graders. There could be some waivers for a few of the high school teams that need it, where those 8th graders could participate potentially for girls ice hockey, track and field, swim and dive, and wrestling. That's more determined in the next couple of weeks when we see what type of interest we have in each of those sports. And that's what the last bullet point points out, is that registration does open up next week. We will promote that with all the families through the messenger system, but then also via social media, the Gloucester Times, and the coaches will start running sport interest meetings to just get a gauge of how the numbers look and where we're going with each of the sports. Obviously, the winter is where we start to get a little bit more wary of the COVID protocols now being back indoors. A lot of these things are still on the table being discussed, whether obviously locally or within the conference or throughout the state. At this point right now, the MIAA last year, you may remember, I would come on here with all sorts of specific protocols. There was a committee, the MIAA COVID task force, that put everything in place. They do not have that this year. And to be honest, I feel like they've kind of taken a step back in the fall season. They basically left it more to the school districts and or conferences to make a lot of decisions on how they handle things if it came to spectators, mask wearing, screening, any sort of social distancing. So right now we are all still waiting to see if there's any specific guidance from the MIAA in regard to indoor sports. But with our initial plans and the guidelines through the state already, indoor sports will have to have masks on. I've been alerting all of my winter coaches and many of the winter athletes, they should plan on that. You wear a mask in school all day, you wear it on the bus, you will be wearing it for sports indoors. So that's where we will be moving with that. Spectators and how that will be handled. Many of the other schools in the conference at this point do not have restrictions, on how many spectators may be at some of the indoor games, but this is still up for conversation with others. We obviously would like to get our usual fans in there as safely as possible. But that is something that is getting discussed. And over the next few weeks, we may come to some more decisions. The only sport that did occur during the fall that is indoors is volleyball, which Gloucester High School does not offer. And there haven't been any issues, as far as I know, throughout the conference with spectators at volleyball games and being indoors. The daily COVID screening will continue to do that. We have our QR codes hanging up all over all of our facilities where the kids will and the coaches will always do their screening prior to practice games and anything else. So we are aware who's in attendance at every event, but also if there's any symptoms prior of COVID. Locker room and shower access in the fall, we avoided it at all costs. We did on school days would open them up first thing in the morning. So athletes could put their equipment in there just so it was safely stored during the day. Then at the end of the day, they would pick it up and maybe just quickly change and get out. There was no loitering around the locker rooms. Nobody was allowed in at halftime, say for football games or pregame. No showers were utilized on the road. None of our teams went into any of the locker rooms. So we did that for the fall, and going towards the winter, we're leaning towards that as well. Some of the other sports could be a little bit challenging, but that's our plan, is to try and avoid that at all costs of using the locker rooms and shower access in places where they could congregate more and have any more risk of spreading COVID. And as far as team setting up events, indoors is spacing out like we did last year. We will be hosting indoor track meets for the first time in many years, so that will be something new for us, but utilizing the space in the field house or even potentially classrooms throughout the hallways, where if we have to put teams in certain classrooms and then maybe call them down for their events, whatever it might have to be, we're starting to plan all of that. There are larger events that happen indoors. This fall, cheerleading, there have been some competitions. They've been run different ways. Some of them are where the cheer team actually shows up, does all of their routine of registration, practice, and performance, and then they leave. Some of them do let some of the teams stay, but they space them out, same as I talked about before, putting them in classrooms or spreading them out throughout the school and keeping teams distance from one another, even while they're waiting for the award ceremony, where there's no close contact situations potentially happening with other teams. So we will be planning on how to handle some of those situations when you come talk to us about sports like a cheerleading, an indoor track and field, or a wrestling. So those are things just on our radar as we're preparing for the winter. And just wanted to give all of you the heads up and get you thinking about it. We didn't want to pull anything up at the last minute at the end of the next month, right before the season start. I don't know if anyone has any questions right now after that quick overview I did.
Questions? Melissa?
So I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Brian, I just want to thank you because every time you speak to us, especially over the past year and a half of COVID, your thoughts are so organized, and it's as we sit here and we think of the concerns that could be brought up to you, you're already answering the question before we even get a chance to ask you. So I just want to say huge kudos to you, because the way you've handled athletics, which we all know is very important to our students, is just extremely impressive. So I can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I definitely didn't think getting into this job that I would specialize in COVID protocols, but I learned a lot over the last year and a half.
You and us both,
Yeah,
Brian.
Kathy?
Brian, I also just wanted to comment. I don't know if it's typical, but it seems that there's a lot of kids going to each other's sporting events this year. There's just been great crowds, and my son and his friends talk about going to, they got done practice and they stayed for another game of another team. It just seems the kids have been really supportive of each other's competitions. So that's been really terrific to see.
Yeah, no, it has been great. Like I said, the couple of home football games, and we will still have a few more the next few weeks, have been tremendous. The success of the boys soccer team has drawn some very good crowds, and yeah, the kids, I think they're finally excited to be out there. And the best part is they've conducted themselves overall pretty good. That is one issue that you run into now with youth sports, and one of those issues of shortage of referees. That is one thing that comes back, is having to deal with spectators and parents or coaches. They don't like to be abused during games. And at this point now, we've had no issues and the kids have been great at all the games.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's always good to see you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, everybody.
Brian, are you available to do my presentation for me in the future?
I don't know about that one. We could give it a whirl, but I don't know if you want that. Have a good night.
So much, Brian. Thank you for everything. Thanks for thank you for staying late with us. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Back to COVID.
COVID. We're still in item A, superintendent's report.
We're jumping around some, okay, so active cases, 5 right now across all the schools. 46 total cases this year, and that's staff and students, and this is all, it's 5 staff and students. This is the cases I've reported to you each time, and you can see this sort of this yo-yo experience, 12-1, 14-5. So, you know, I will say this is that while there certainly are more cases than there were, you know, this time last year by a lot. We didn't get our first case last year, I think October 13th. But we are, it's, you know, we get a little flurry here and there, you know, 1 week, one almost every day across different schools. But I will say that the protocols are helping a ton. Many folks, especially at the high school, and some of you also at O'Malley, if it's a student and they're close contact, because they're vaccinated, they're free and clear. You know, don't have to even participate in any of the protocols, but we are working with them, make sure their families know to watch the symptoms. That's the protocol for if you're vaccinated. We also test and stay, obviously. Test and stay, to remind folks, if you are a close contact who's 3 feet or more than 3 feet, you don't have to do any of the testing to monitor for symptoms. If you're 3 feet or closer, then you can participate in test and stay, if that happened at school. So, it's been challenging for us and challenging for families to understand that. Our nurses have, you know, gotten clearer sheets and clear explanations. We've also done some stuff where kids who identify as close contact go home that first day. Then we can work with their families to make sure they understand what the protocols are, and they can make a choice. So getting better at that, definitely, but still, you know, work in progress. But certainly our nurses have been helping me a ton on that. So that's really been able to keep many more people in school than we had in the past. So that's a big deal. Good news on testing. I mentioned to you both in email, but also in reports here, just about challenges on the staffing supplied by the state for our testing protocols. That's test and stay and weekly COVID safety checks. Thankfully, by working with the State Department of Education, specifically Russell Johnston, and then also CIC Health, which is the main state contractor supplying all the testing. Have a whole new team in. The National Guard helped us last week. We put the weekly COVID safety checks testing on hold for 2 weeks. Nurse leader Jeff Parko and Kylie Davis worked with a new team, a new set of contractors this past week, and have done. That team is fantastic, well organized, great communicators. Our team, of course, Jeff and Kylie have been great, and had a good start for the last couple of days. We've done the weekly COVID safety check testing with all schools in the past 2 days, and those contractors that staff will help us do test and stay and the weekly COVID safety check at all schools. So we're off on it much better. And so we started that up. That's going very well. I will say again, just our nurses, you know, the whole year they've been going above and beyond. Really appreciate their work, and especially, you know, they've had to you know, fill in, support, do all the testing while the state work the kinks out. So I think we're on a good path now. So here are the numbers of all the folks who registered for the weekly COVID safety checks. We haven't been able to test everyone every week, as I said, but we're ramping that up again. We also have had some complications on the consent forms, specifically the online consent. This is not something that Jeff Parker has been pushing the state on a lot, but to no avail. You have to consent for all forms of testing: symptomatic testing, test and stay, and the weekly COVID safety checks. Understandably, many of our families don't want to consent to all those. Okay, So it's quite confusing about what they have consented for. It's not a checkbox of those 3 ones, okay? I wish it was. It seems to be a simple thing to do these days, but that's not how they're operating. So we've had to confirm, reconfirm. The paper forms help quite a bit. With the contract we had, there was some snafus in terms of what data they were entering or not entering. So Kylie and Jeff, and I think to some degree support from nurses, continue to recheck those, and we'll get a handle on it. But it's been just hard. It's been difficult to track very well.
What's a plum code? That's crazy. What did they do?
That they were the first to do the paper forms.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. That was a and a lot of these, I mean, so we've been doing more and more paper forms. That helps, but then also the communication from our nurses to families about consent when they say if they're close contact, that's helped as well. So I mentioned that our reach has gotten better. That's part of it. So working on that. Here are student vaccination rates. You can see that in the lower right-hand corner is the last time reported to you. So some small changes. The 10th grade is zipping ahead of everyone. So they're 73%. So minor movement, 7th and 8th grade, are pretty much the same as it was at.
Ninth grade went down.
Yeah, 9th grade go down.
I do not know. That could be a typo. I will look at that.
Maybe it's supposed to be 64.
We haven't. It could be. We have not gotten lots and lots more 9th graders.
I'm vaccinated.
I'll look at that. Thank you for catching that. And then you can see 11 and 12 are where they were. We are not, so, and then the last piece, I think, I mentioned before, oh yeah, is that the mask rule, statewide mask mandate is in effect till at least January 15th. Unless we have 80% at one of our schools, you can see we're not near that at this point. Even if we got the 80%, then it becomes a local decision about whether to change or not. Okay.
Anybody know what's happening in 10th grade? Because that's a big jump.
I do not know.
That's great. Well done, 10th grade.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big jump.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Or I'll see if we can find out. I'm sure we
I'm
can find
sure
out.
there's no.
Maybe they added the ones
Great.
on the other grade that they.
Yeah, they still, right, those 9th graders, all that skipped ahead. to
Yeah.
9th grade.
Yeah, maybe.
right.
That is, thank you for working through all that stuff. And I think we got through some things later on the agenda as well.
Move forward on our final update on negotiations. And we're gonna put up the
I
presentation.
think Maria has it.
Maria has the presentation. We,
The mayor has her hand up. In the thing.
Yep, she does.
Yeah, I do. I need to know, are you guys gonna vote on anything? Because I'm gonna be leaving. It's 9 o'clock. My janitor's leaving. And I don't feel like staying in City Hall by myself. It's spooky. No, but I have to shut up. I have to leave. So I can make them wait 5 minutes. Are we gonna vote on anything?
tonight, I believe, is, there's a grant, which is just.
But you have the vote.
Extension of the grant from the GEF about the auto shop. And we're gonna vote on the.
We already did proprietary.
We did proprietary, but were we gonna vote on the House bill? Or,
I don't think that's, well, I don't know.
Okay.
okay.
But you'll have enough there. All right, that's fine. Also, just a reminder, everyone, that I just got off with National Grid. They're done for the night. They're going home to rest and they'll start again tomorrow. So whoever doesn't have power will not have power. And everyone in Magnolia, unfortunately, I'm sorry, in West Gloucester, we will not have power until probably late tomorrow afternoon.
Are the schools up?
No.
West Parish is not, Beaman is not, so no power for tonight. They're not gonna work until tomorrow, some of the structures. We cannot do anything as West Parish because it's the train, MBTA, the flagging, the whole thing, it's whatever. And that's why it was a 6-hour delay to do that, our area. That's what I'm telling you right now. So right now, I all sent you how many percentage right now? 49% of Gloucester residents are still without.
All right.
Okay, so you, Ben, later before you decide, we have teachers and whatever, and they have to get there. And right now, 127, they'll have to, I don't know where they're gonna take the bus. That's the whole thing. So I don't know if kids. So just so you know.
Okay, thank you very
Good night,
much.
everyone. Good night.
Before when like the
Get some sleep.
I don't think so. I don't have Wi-Fi, so I guess I won't be on social media, so that's a good thing. All right, bye.
So I think we've had days where certain schools have closed, not all.
I think it's been maybe one school.
One
because of the
school.
law.
Well, I'm just saying, if the high schools have them, Mailey's up in 2 of the elementaries.
But where do the people live and do they have power at home and
Sure, sure, sure.
passing by the roads because there's 2 roads closed down? There's a lot going on, so.
Tomorrow's what, Thursday? Well, I have to want to screw up, what's the pep rally. whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's the superintendent's part. So we're currently in negotiations with the GTA. And we have been concerned that some of the information out there is, that is floating around is not accurate. So what we're going to try to do, fairly briefly, is just to update people on where we are, what our motivation is, and what the actual proposals consist of. So we have 3 goals when we sat down to start the negotiations, and they are sustainability, retaining excellent, attract and retaining excellent teachers, and to support the growing complexity of Gloucester's student needs. We have a high rate of special needs students, as well as an increasing number of English language learners. And to do all this while being fiscally responsible to the city and its taxpayers. So we value our educators, and we have, as we value all of our school staff. But what seems to be a bit of information out there that people are not aware of. The average salary for GTA members is $85,200. That's the average salary. Nearly 30% of the GTA members make more than $90,000. The school committee has proposed raising the starting salary of the entry-level teachers from $51,000 to $60,200 over 3 years for teachers with master's degrees. We believe that the teachers earn and deserve these salaries. They work very hard and are entrusted with the education of our city's families and children.
Okay, so we just want people to understand how pay scales work for the teachers union and that part of our staff. All of our different groups like bus drivers and some of the other groups do not have this particular kind of a structure, but this group has this structure where we have steps that that teachers advance on as they are here year after year after year. And that happens for the first 12 years or something a little bit less as we drop steps and add steps. So as they're here for a length of time, the next year their pay goes up. And the increases in these steps are anywhere from 4% to 6.4%. And that's currently in the contract, and that happens on an annual basis. And those are increases both to our budget and to teachers' pay. The other way this works is as a teacher moves through their education and gains more credits in their education, they can then move what we call tracks, which is the columns as you move over to the right. So a teacher, oftentimes as they move through their education, moves diagonally or horizontally along this. And of course, our most experienced teachers who've been here for over 12 years and have greater than 60 credits are down in that bottom right corner. And that, as Jonathan said, is about 30% of our staff.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the training that teachers get to move over lanes, do we provide any reimbursement for that type of training?
Yes, there is every year we have a $50,000 line item in the budget for tuition reimbursement. And so depending upon how many teachers take certified courses, that gets dispersed among those teachers that have submitted for reimbursement.
And so they submit that to the administrators, or they submit it to?
My understanding of historically, every person who has submitted, one course gets that reimbursed. And then often not, and then a number of folks will get their second course reimbursed. So not everyone does, because, we get to the 50,000 ceiling.
Yep.
But it's always been where everybody who's taken a course gets that reimbursed, and then some people get a second course.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. So the annual salary increases for the teachers union is, there are 4 types of possible salary increases. One is the annual step, which I just went through on the previous slide, and that's as teachers move through the year. And this is part of our contract and is not being, up for discussion. It's the structure of which both our district and all the other districts that I'm aware of have in terms of compensating educators. The second piece is cost of living increase, which tends to be what our negotiations from a financial perspective center around. And so that would be awarded to every teacher as we negotiate and agree upon a cost of living increase. And then the third is the track increase, which I went through about advancing their education. And then there's also a longevity payment. And that is for teachers who have been working in Gloucester Public Schools for at least 15 years. And that goes up, it starts at $500 and it goes up to $1,500 every year for teachers who have been with us over 15 years. So one of our goals is to attract and retain high quality teachers. We have examined entry-level teachers or first-year teachers, not entry-level, but they're usually coming in with their masters. And part of our opening proposal was to increase the salary from around 51,000 to around 60,000 over 3 years. The Gloucester Teachers Association proposal increased the salary from 51,000 to about $55,800. Second part of that is to continue to increase the veteran staff at the highest step by increasing their total annual salary at rates comparable to recent increases. Once teachers hit that top step, they get only the cost of living increase. So that's why that number is always kind of the focus of attention. You can see that we've put down the historical rate of increase from previous years. You'll see 2%, 2%, 2.5% in fiscal year 2019, and then goes down to 2%. And the most recent year, we ended at 2.25. We do know that there are some of us on the committee who have remembered years where the rate was closer to 1, and sometimes 0 in some of our hardest times. So we're glad that we've been able to compensate and come to agreements that have been higher than I think what we experienced for quite a while in the 2000s and early 2010s.
Can you just talk a little bit about how last year was one of our highest increases, and talk about how we did that comparison to dark communities, which put us comparable to communities that are like us.
Right.
There's a lot of work put into that last year, and that's why we did increase over 2% last year too.
Well, you can explain that.
You just sound so good. You just sound like a good narrative.
Well, and yes, in the last contract discussion, where we came up to the last agreement, which was a 3-year agreement, we definitely did a hard look as to comparable districts. The Department of Education has what's called DART districts. I don't know what it stands for, but it compares districts that are both similar economically in terms of ability to pay, in a community's, community's ability to pay, as well as the demographics of the population of students that they serve. We use that for comparisons. We used it for looking at salary pay, so we can figure out how we are relative to other similar districts. We use that to compare our scores when we're trying to see how we're doing relative to other communities that have a similar makeup of student body. So that is a good measure for us to see how we're doing. And as Melissa said, in the last contract, we brought our salaries up so that we were more comparable and towards the top of that pay scale. We also look at the North Shore districts as well to see where we rank. And so that's kind of that benchmark of a reality check. Our salaries, do we start our teachers right? Within a certain range that we'd like to attract and have people accept to come work in our schools, because our schools are great and our kids are great. And then we also compare it along the way, so we make sure that our salary structure keeps pace with other districts, including at the top step as well.
And that includes communities like Salem and Peabody, which are close to us. They're not the Rockport, Manchester, but they're communities that we associate with and have relationships with. So are included in those dark communities that we're comparable to.
Okay. So this slide talks about the teachers on the top step, and our opening proposal for the teachers on this top step range from 1.5% to 2.12%. And that depends upon what track the teachers might fall in. And then the Gloucester Teachers Association opening proposal for the highest earners was 7%, and that's just for this first year of the contract. Supporting our students' complex needs. We know that we have, this wonderful diverse population. We have students that show up that don't know any English quite yet, or they're learning English. And we definitely need to assimilate them and meet their needs quickly and help them succeed. And our population of English learners has grown increasingly at 10% per year for at least the 4 or 5 years. And we put money into staffing to make sure we're meeting these families' needs. So that is an area that we know our teachers could benefit from increased training and certification. We also have nearly 30% of our students who are identified as having disabilities. So part of our opening proposal includes a pot of money, about $25,000, to help teachers get certified in English language education or special education. So we think that that is a priority to put money into getting, incentivizing our teachers to get more certifications so that our students can be better served. Fiscal responsibility. As chair of the Building and Finance Subcommittee for a long time in my tenure, it's really important that we operate within the budget that the city can give us. We clearly go and advocate for our budget that we put forth because we feel strongly in those priorities that we are putting in our budget and articulating what are our priorities. So we want to operate within the annual increases that the taxpayers in the city provide to Gloucester schools, so we aren't forced to cut existing positions or programs. That has been a huge focus over the years, is that we do not want to be in a situation where we have to have any layoffs or do anything like that. We want to maintain sustainable total annual salary increases that are aligned with the annual percentage increase in the operating budget. Transparency. One of the reasons we're doing this presentation in its entirety tonight is so that people understand how personnel costs work within the school district and how annual increases impact the school budget each year. So we just want to be clear about what the opening proposals are. Our opening proposal for the school committee would cost $1,230,307, and the estimated cost of the Gloucester Teachers Association opening compensation proposal is around $2.2 million. And then also to keep in mind that the annual average increase in our school budget for the past 2 or 3 years has been around $1,250,000. So in summary, With the school committee's opening proposals, all GTA members would get between $1,200 and $6,800 salary increase next year. The school committee has proposed that veteran teachers get raises similar to the ones they have had in each of the last 5 years. The school committee wants to significantly raise starting salaries, so Gloucester has some of the highest starting salaries in the area. And the school committee wants to limit budget growth so we can grow steadily and not overburden the city's taxpayers or be forced to cut positions. And the Gloucester teachers of opening proposals are certainly much higher than what we have hoped for.
Thank you, Dorothy. That's good. Anything else anybody would like to add? Joel?
Hopefully when the agreement is reached from one or the other, whatever makes sense, just kind of reset the numbers in that table. It seems funny that steps 1 and 2 don't exist anymore, but they still are. It's like, would it make sense to eventually at the end of this, when the dust all settles, to renumber these steps instead of having these blank steps that don't exist? Seems like a very like overly sized chart. Just trying to get some efficiency here. There's not literally not even salaries in those cells anymore, right? So might as well
Just renumber.
renumber them, right? So at the end of this, step 3 becomes step 1, but the numbers don't change for salaries, becomes, you know, the starting step again.
It's the concept is, I appreciate it's a little more complicated than where you're placing people on steps based on their prior experience they come here. It's easier to place them on the first step if they are a new beginning teacher, first year teacher. They're coming to our schools with experience. That's when it gets a little more complicated.
So I was on step 7, my last district, where do I land now? And go, oh, you're gonna be at step 5, but don't worry, step 5 is like a step 7.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing's easy. Nothing's easy.
I think one of the
What a
slides.
great question.
Yeah, no, it is.
That seemed like that, like, most like, here's what we all agree on. Let's make this table less ridiculous. No, can't do that.
I think, and along those lines, one of the titles of one of the slides that you just presented was not as simple as it sounds. And it's the case. It really is. It's a complicated. Complicated.
Laura has a question.
Laura?
Just a point of clarification on slide number 10. So you give the numbers of the total cost of our opening compensation proposal is 1.230307. Total cost of GTA's opening compensation proposal is $2,200,000. Those are not the increases. Those are the total that's not the increase in compensation. That's the total number of each proposed.
No, that's the increase. That is the
That's the
increase.
That's the financial.
Year-over-year increase.
Yeah, the financial impact too, because part of the proposal that we put forth is increasing pay for retired teachers, substitute pay. So that would be part of this.
Proposals, longevity increases.
Yeah.
There's a variety of pieces in their proposals, which I'll add to that, which you in your presentation didn't cover all of them.
So the vast majority of what our increases in budget are per year is for teachers' compensation.
Yes.
There are 3 buckets always. There's compensation across the board. That is healthcare costs, and then special education, tuition, and also transportation. In any school district, those are the 3 main drivers of additional costs.
So one of the things that isn't in here that has to be taken into consideration, and it's sort of an unknown every year, but we do get a certain number of retirements. We get a certain number of retirements, which makes it possible for us to, even though we only get a 1.25 million, I shouldn't say almost, it's a good piece of change, but we're able to offer close to that same amount of money to the teachers. Because we do save some money with retirement.
Can superintendent talk about a little bit about when we hire a new teacher, where they land on the scale? I think a lot of people look at the scale and think automatically that teachers are hired at the first step of the first track.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, in terms of new teachers who haven't taught before, we almost always hire teachers with master's degrees. We don't hire many teachers. We hire some, definitely, but the majority of teachers we're hiring a master's degree, first of all, especially new teachers. Second of all, in terms of, say, I'll give you an example. if, let me look at the scale we're talking. If if a teacher comes to us and they've been working in another district,
Should we put this scale up?
yeah, that might be helpful.
Can you find it, Maria?
It's slide number 4.
Thank you.
So if a new teacher starts with if a teacher comes to Gloucester and has been teaching for, say, 6 years, okay, in a public school system, then we would typically place them on step 6. Okay, so you see, if you look at the column on the left, step 6, okay, you go across, that's 58,000. And so if a teacher, that's how we place them. If a teacher, at the same time, though, if a teacher comes to us and hasn't taught before, they're placed on step 3, okay? Because as Mr. Fowler was saying, we don't have steps 1 or 2 at this point, okay? So there's some sort of scrunching of that, but that's how the system operates, so to speak.
While you have this slide up, I probably should have added this. This is the current pay scale. This is not what we're offering. This is not. So the reality is everybody is going to make more than this year. We've already offered more. This is the old scale. This would be if we didn't settle anything, and we will settle something.
That red cell becomes 59.8 within the next 3 years under the current proposal we've put forward.
Right.
No,
60,000. Oh, 60, sorry, and it becomes 55.8 under the GTA proposal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's for a teacher that's never taught before.
Right.
And so that just, so if your example of hiring someone with 6 years experience, right? We start at 59, we get close to 61, right? So we're more competitive even the further down we go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I think that's, from what I've heard, it's harder sometimes to hire people with more experience.
It's hard to hire anyone these days.
Yeah.
But no, depending what you're hiring, high school science, for example, special education, bilingual staff.
Yeah.
Those are some of the real challenging ones.
Yeah.
And then folks who come with experience in those areas, are very valuable in so many ways. So it just really depends on the type of position, type of year, that sort of thing. But those are historically some of the more difficult positions to find people for. And so those folks are, they may switch school districts and then we'll start them at the higher rate. If that's what they, have that experience.
Any other?
I would just want to add that when we look to compare to other districts, we also have to compare time on learning. Some districts have more days, more hours during the day of teaching and learning than we do. So we have to keep that into consideration when we're doing comparison to other districts instead of just looking at salary schedules.
So this doesn't take into consideration the benefits that we offer in Gloucester, which are in many cases more generous than other communities in that we pay somewhere between between 75 and 85% of the healthcare costs.
The way GIC works, usually in most communities, they pay 30%. But Gloucester's been very generous with city employees. I was part of the PEC negotiating team for that. And we offered lower percentage rates to our employees, where a lot of districts don't do that. And a lot of teachers are paying the 25 or 30%, where in here, there's an opportunity to pay just 15% for good insurance.
And they get 18 sick days. Anyway, anything else before we move on? Thank you. So the next order of business is our subcommittee reports, and we'll start with building and finance, and I'll hand it back to Kathy Clancy.
You have to help fill in a little bit because I don't know where my notes are. They're supposed to be in this book, but So we had Mike Hale, the Director of Public Works, at our meeting last Wednesday to give us an update on what summer work has been done. And the summer work, if you've been in any of our buildings, I am impressed every time I go in the high school, we have our meetings there, and how sparkly that place is these days. They clearly are doing amazing work and consistently keeping our buildings safe and clean and really taking pride in what they're doing. The big projects over the summer, were the new entrances at O'Malley and the high school. I have not gotten to see the O'Malley entrance yet, but I would love an invitation at some point from the superintendent to see the middle school. But I just think even walking into the high school, it's just more, it's brighter, it's more welcoming. I think it's safer now with the double entry.
It makes so much more sense.
It's,
It really does.
it's good that we were able to secure the funding through the city to do a project like that, I think makes a huge difference for multiple reasons. There's been painting going on over the summer. All the floors get, stripped of the wax and re-waxed and shined up for those schools that have that kind of tile. The new schools have different flooring that do not require that kind of summer maintenance, which is a good thing. We talked about playgrounds at Beaman and Plum Cove, about what that process would be. So am I forgetting any summer list of work during anything else? I know they're busy. They're always busy.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of work done at Beaman, in terms of creating a new classroom out of what was a faculty room, creating a new faculty room. All the work at St. Anne's that the DPW helped out with, from painting in the springtime into the summer, moving. The list was extensive, as it always is. And then highlighting some specific repairs across the various schools. Beaman got a fair bit of work. But also, one of the challenges this year was with Beaman West Parish going, really full bore. West Parish for our ESY program, and then Beaman for our new sort of summer learning Camp Spindrift, and then also our other programs as well in terms of the coding.
Coding, engineering,
The
and
code-
coding camp.
The coordinator coding camp. It's just that adds a whole another level of complexity for DPW and our custodians to clean schools, get them ready, repair, maintenance, and sort of stuff. So we're making it harder for them, and they're continuing to do a very good job getting a lot done each summer. It isn't a whole lot. If you get past July 4th, and there's not a lot of time. So they work really hard also.
The second item we talked about, Grant Harris presented the E-rate funding that we receive or apply for and receive. So we did need to.
There was a vote that came out of that.
Yeah, there's a vote that came out of this.
Yes, it was to approve the ECF funding in the amount of $160,000.
Yeah, not this, okay. Okay, yeah, so the funding that we want to receive and accept is funding for Chromebooks through this E-rate application in the amount of $160,000, and I so moved.
Second.
Someone's giving us this money?
So the federal government through the E-rates. Yeah.
We're giving it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Try to track it, that's all.
So it's a federal reimbursement program, which because of our
Title, it's based on Title I students. And we're getting the total cost of the Chromebooks will exceed 160,000 by 2000. So we need to ask for approval so that the books reflect the total cost of the Chromebooks instead of the net cost. The total cost is important.
and just to remind, to acquire more Chromebooks, we do a lot. But part of the reason for that is now where we were supplying Chromebooks every year for ninth graders as they move up to move into the high school. We're now doing it with third graders as well. And so it's a double purchase essentially every year going forward. So the E-rate in this case helps out quite a bit to move us to support that.
Any further discussion? Maria, could we roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes. And Grant also Utility has submitted a funding request for ECF2 for Chromebooks as well. The amount of $94,075 and also money for T-Mobile hotspots. 100 hotspots for $24,000. So we're waiting on hearing back on those.
Yes.
requests.
Just as we have ESSER 1, 2, and 3, this is ECF and ECF2. Again, federal dollars.
No, this program's been in place for many years.
I think they funded it additionally from ARPA. So it's the same program, but they've added some funds from the relief funds.
So I'm sure everybody saw the packet. We went through a transportation presentation, talking about the reimbursement for transportation, which now falls under eligible costs for circuit breaker, which is good news because we'll get more reimbursement for those costs. Because our district transportation was always 100% on the district. And so that will scale up over the next 3 years.
4 years.
4 years. That's good. And then we also, Adam Mayo has been exploring replacing some contracting costs for SD 7D drivers with in-house drivers. So we're going to continue to explore that as well as a way of both having control over that particular function, but also the primary reason is the 16.
Yeah, so now we contract out for all the van transportation out of district and also for homeless and foster replacements. And those costs keep rising because of the market. And so beginning to look into whether or not it makes sense to take that in-house.
He points out that he puts things out for bid and he only gets one bid, and not much choice.
Sure.
And the need is increasing too,
The
right?
need is increasing. So education fluctuates. What we are seeing recently is increase in foster replacement and homeless students. Those would be pretty far afield.
And the other good thing about doing this in-house would be that licensure is not the same as for the big buses. So we might be able to get people involved in the system and train them up to move, start on vans and then get certified to drive the big buses. Because right now, it take 2 or 3 months
Yes.
to get somebody through the program of getting certified to drive the full-size school buses. But this way we could have them working while that training is going on.
So we'll continue working with you on this. One complicating factor to tell you more about is because of the the new circuit breaker reimbursement for transportation, they actually sort of may level the playing field on in-house or out-of-house. But again, that's just a complexity that didn't exist until now. But that's the reason why it's a little more complicated to determine. But we'll bring all that to you to consider and sister, it's your birthday at some point tonight. Thankfully, she's in different time zones.
That's the problem.
We reviewed,
Yeah,
so
we're not yet.
you guys have a packet. The other was ESSER 3 budget and what's, where the numbers are falling currently, as well as looking quickly at fiscal 23 through 25 proposed budgets.
Any more questions? We'll move on to our personnel subcommittee meeting, and I'll turn it over to Chairperson.
Thank you.
If
So-
that's it.
The person. So the personnel subcommittee met on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, only a few days ago, and in attendance was myself, Kathy, and Jonathan, which is the subcommittee for that group. we had two items. One, I'm gonna present to you tonight in the hopes that you've had a chance to review it and maybe be able to vote on it because it's time sensitive. But I know in the past, we've discussed policies where we don't like to vote on things sometimes right out of subcommittee, but we're hoping tonight we can answer any questions and it's will be acceptable to put forward. And I'm gonna ask them to explain what it is. So it's a job description for a new position, which is a transportation manager. It is in your packet. It was vetted by personnel. We did make a couple of changes to what was presented to us, and that copy is in your packet tonight with the changes. So Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about what this position is and what it will do, or would you rather? I do it?
Absolutely. So as Adam Mayo was presented to both the program subcommittee and the personnel subcommittee, which I think counts for almost everybody here in the room. Some of his recommendations on as we move forward and transition away from him to our new director, Lori Francis. He made recommendations in a variety of areas: communications, support, and sort of acclimation of families, the 7D band we talked about. And he also was very clear about the complexity of the job as it grows, more and more technology based, much more communication involved and customer service involved, more as we've been successfully adding more students to our buses. And then all of that combined with the fact that it's just one person. There is no backup. The way it's structured right now, which is the director and then drivers and monitors, there's no backup for that director. And he and now she, if there's an emergency, they have to handle it all themselves. Any hour of the night, something comes up, or any during when our bus is out, or even before that. For example, the transit director, he was on the phone with me this morning at 4:45, and he was going to schools to find out what was lit up and what wasn't. That's some of the roles that transit director helps out with. And so without having any backup, any redundancy, to first of all deal with a much more complex job, one that we may be expanding further if we take on our district transportation, and then just the level of technology and whatnot. Really strongly believes, and I fully support this, that we take on a transportation manager as well. That allows you to split responsibilities and have redundancy. That allows it to be a manageable job where we will further retain people over the long haul. It's a possibility for succession. I'm not saying it will be, but it could be. So it really helps us just have a sort of more secure, well-operated system. So we have identified ESSER funds this year and 2 more years. As we're describing, we would seek to pull that on the operating budget at that time. But we have secured the funding for this year and 2 more years.
This year and 1 more year.
This year, but then the idea is 3 years total.
FY22, FY23, and then it goes on F24 on the operating.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah, okay, great, thank you. Yeah.
So note that this is not, it's a non-union position. It's a separate contract to work directly with the transportation director. So there was a vote, it was recommended to the full school committee to adopt this description.
So are people comfortable voting on this with the information they have?
Yeah, if you want to move it.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that motion forward. So
Okay,
it was
go
a
ahead.
motion of, a unanimous motion by the personnel subcommittee to recommend to the full committee to adopt this job description. Nice one.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
What's the side?
60 to 70.
I think one thing Adam mentioned was like, even if it's like if an accident occurs, he's on an accident, and then other buses have to radio into the main office, so and so's parents aren't here, there's literally no one there to see that radio call, the one and only person working in the department.
Safety issues.
Yeah, this is absolutely crucial to have at least a second person in the department.
And it puts another body on the bus too.
Yeah, doing any other one person departments this kind of reach, like geographic reach across the.
Well, we're getting going.
Well, next time. I'm in favor of this, so.
Any further discussion? Maria, do we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So now we can post that position.
You'll post it tomorrow.
The second order of business we had was, knowing that it's now October, almost November, I thought it would be time for the committee someplace, somewhere to have a discussion about the potential superintendent goals for this school year. I know last year program looked at this topic and the year before personnel looked at it. I mean, it's one of those topics that can be looked at by any committee and discussed. But I added it to our agenda more for a time sensitive, to get this going in place soon, knowing who gets evaluated in June now as opposed to December. So just from a very high level, because this is not to be voted on tonight, this is gonna come back in a couple weeks where Ben is gonna present it. Present the goals and then talk about criteria and evidence and how these goals will be measured, because that's not a conversation that we had at the subcommittee. We just talked about the goals themselves. And I'm just gonna name very quickly in the interest of time, because I know it's 9:30 and we all need to get home to our dark houses.
And cold house.
Go burn some chairs.
So just from a high level, these are goals that the superintendent brought forward to us and we discussed and pretty much agreed that it's in line with our priorities as a school committee, but obviously that will be up for discussion at the next school committee meeting when we discuss this. So goal number one, I'm just gonna say what they were, I'm not gonna get into each one of them, because then we'll do that in a much deeper conversation down the road, is just operating the school safely. That's always one of our topics, especially during COVID. But this goes into a little bit more than COVID. The second goal talks about leading for long-term. And it includes the entry plan process and development outreach to the community and other measures to keep that goal in place. The third goal is building the capacity and collaboration of the district leadership team. The fourth goal is community engagement to support our students and families. And then goal 5 is long-term capital planning and improvement, which we are on a great path to already. So those are the goals that the superintendent discussed and brought forward to us, and we'll be bringing forward to the committee. And we'll have an opportunity to discuss it more at the November school committee meeting, which I believe is November. So you'll be hearing more about that. And that was the end of
Any
our.
questions? Nope. Okay, our next order of business is finish up our action items, and what we have to do is to approve the Gloucester Education Foundation grant of $50,000, which is a third installment of $150,000 gift to the Gloucester High School for the purpose of supporting the auto tech program at Gloucester High School, and I so moved. Any discussion?
Thank you, Ron. Mark.
We get a celebration and presentation of a large check each ago. Always a great time to put the shine in the shop and see Mr. Waugh and thank him for generosity.
What was he driving?
It was
He always
big and
drives
wide, I
something.
think. I don't remember though, honestly.
He's a good guy.
He's a great guy. He's a super guy.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, Maria, do we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza.
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's unanimous.
We have 9 modular at Beam and 6 at Funko.
7.
Presentation, I guess, school committee a while ago.
There's 6 and 6 and we have 3 more and
Okay, so next order of business is an update on the East Gloucester Veterans School Building Project. We're in the process of, MSBA has received our 90% submission. They have returned their questions. You know, they'll always have some questions about this and that. There was nothing in the questions that seemed to be of particular interest, with the exception of there's a don't know if I can explain this right. The state has a rule that basically says that cities and towns should have some sort of plan for hiring racially and diverse contractors. So I think it's
Minority.
minority
women.
and women. And Gloucester doesn't seem to have ever put that policy, developed that policy. So so we just have to communicate, the building committee has communicated that to the city, and it's on them to, it's not something that school committee needs to develop. It's something that the city is supposed to develop for a universal policy, but it's all just a goal. It's not as it was explained to us. It's very hard to meet some of the criteria because the contractors just don't exist.
If it show that you attempted to
But
hire,
yeah,
right?
well,
Something like that.
yeah, and you have to have a policy. In Gloucester, doesn't have a policy, so that's where they need to start. So that was nothing to do with the building itself. It was just one of those things that they kind of checked that box and said we didn't do that. Other than that, there wasn't anything significant in the review. The groundbreaking.
Right, yeah, no, we gave the other news, which is about the groundbreaking and then the proprietary items.
And that's pretty much.
How are things going to stadiums?
Um,
Have you heard any complaints? I probably should say.
they have power.
How's the kitchen here? I know it's not a kitchen. I'm told, don't even call it a kitchen,
Not a
but
kitchen.
how is the?
So
oven and
we're
room
continuing to work on making sure we get fresh air in there and also cooler, because when we hadn't used that area when we had West Parish. And so we didn't know until they turned the boilers on, they're very big, that it sort of travels through that room, that food prep room. And so we're making changes to make sure that's usable. I mean, that it works for our food service workers. That's one issue. We had a tour. City Councilor Jamie O'Hara and Barry Pett and Doc Gilman came by, and Matt Fusco was great in showing them the place, which was very helpful. We appreciated that. It was after hours. I was trying to get them to come in during the school day because that's when things happen, but their schedules didn't allow for that. But no, I think things are going well. Just if there's any challenge we're having events as we're in any school, isn't about the facility. So it's got its quirks. It's got its wonderfulness, like gigantic windows. But yeah, folks, I feel you are making a great place. Warm and welcoming school.
Just community wise, anecdotally, so the use of Burns Field after school has been huge. Just like Friday afternoon, the amount of students that had right out of that parking lot with their parents and walk right back over to Burns Field and hang out there for a half an hour. It's really good feel of community, And they did they're inspired by Plum Cove, did their first ever trunk or treat last week. It was like 20-something cars volunteered. They filled up the little parking area. A huge turnout. I mean, just in the Matt Fusco was like every picture of him. He's always a jovial guy that's smiling ear to ear. And then all the parents I spoke to said it was it's like such a great community event. So it's really nice to see this kind of be the impetus, because veterans is always kind of the one that sometimes it's hard to get the community together. And so far this year, the efforts being made and the student and family population seems to be responding to that effort in a good way. And I hope that carries through as they meld with East Gloucester and in the facility, but so far kind of neat.
Do they have any more plans to have the kids get together? I know we did that at the tech when we collaborated and put together.
Yeah, so
the
one-
second SDID.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm working on with both principals this year is that, is the work they're doing to bring together folks. One area, we're gonna be working on, so there's different levels of this, right? There's community, and there'll be more and more community as we proceed this year and the next year. Another piece of it is just instruction, you know? One good thing is that we're doing the new math in focus. And so both schools are doing the same approach on that, which is great. They're also obviously the ELI pilot, which will, adopt next year or the following year. So they'll be on the same page on that. One of the crucial areas is just special education. They have different approaches to special education. And so we're going to be looking at that. And the first piece is just getting together the program leaders and the principals, myself, Katie Provost, and then so we're starting there this essentially this next couple months on really looking at that and sort of coming to terms with that and how we just align, integrate, learn from each other, and that's where we're going to begin is them learning about how each school does that, and then go from there. So that's the first step. But if you think about the different layers, adult culture, instruction, family, community, students connecting, we'll continue working on all of that. But it'll get rolling sort of sometime. Well, it's starting to roll now, but it's going to pick up.
Over 2 years, yeah.
So one small thing, and we actually did this year with Fishman Youth Soccer because I'm involved with the program. Plus, little sports teams, especially the younger grades, divide up teams by schools. And so there's a Beaman team, West Parish team for softball and stuff like that. And what Fishman Youth Soccer did this year was they made a concerted effort to blend East Gloucester and Vets students. So there's EG Vets teams are starting to form. It's like my son's in an EG Vets team in first grade. By the time he gets into third grade at the new school, he'll be seeing kids from East Gloucester he's been playing sports with for a couple of years. None of us play sports, but so if we as a committee or we as a amateur, somebody could reach out to those sort of community things, say, hey, whether it's sports or other extracurriculars, say, hey, if you typically divide up a school, would you consider beginning to blend EG and Vets because there'll be a blended population by 2023. It's a great way to get to know. So everyone will have a couple people they know. Yeah, it was but I'm always the only thing they're O'Malley anyways. It's so much nicer to O'Malley needs to know some people, and this is like a microcosm of that.
Yeah, but that's why the nature's classroom at fifth grade was always good, because
Yeah.
kids knew each other from different
Yeah,
sports,
yeah,
but then
yeah.
they actually got to spend time together.
They doing nature's classroom this year?
We are going to, we've been working on that, very concerned about that. The 5 principals are working on an alternative for the 5th graders, and they're going to be communicating as they sort of put their wraps on that with their families. So,
Yeah, really.
but no, and really, what we've been thinking about and working on is how do you have a sort of a really seminal sort of experience that brings folks together across schools, because that is one of the values of what we do in Nature's Classroom. But it's also it's learning, it's active, hopefully outdoors, that sort of thing. But it also has this real important benefit of bringing folks together. So they're working on that. We'll bring something forward to you, but they're working on communication on it.
Okay, anything else on East Gloucester Vets?
Just want to mention that because there's a groundbreaking, that means all sorts of big, heavy materials will start showing up. And I think we've been warned that the bills will start getting bigger because, all the planning, but then steel will start coming, which will see numbers, just understand it's not human time, it's stuff that'll keep it strong.
When will we actually start seeing building? I know we're fortunate so far to have a warmer fall.
Yeah.
What's the goal like by?
Actually, we have said that we actually talked about this at the building committee, is getting folks a very much clearer schedule and a look ahead. Actually, I mentioned that last time, so we'll get that. We'll have that at the next meeting and then have something. If not every meeting, then every other meeting. So, but yeah, we need to get that to you.
But the goal, I believe, is to get foundations in before frost. So we'll see. I mean, when we built West Parish, we had, November and December were really warm, and then it just
Hundreds of
snowed
snow.
every day for the next 2 months.
What's not happening this year?
They're saying a warmer winter, so hopefully, fingers crossed.
Was the other issue being this?
Okay, so we're ready to move on to our final item, which is our, we actually have something to report on the 926, House Bill 926. The Board of Health is looked at it and communicated to Laura.
Sure, so basically they looked at this and they, this bill that was brought to us by two women, which basically, what was explained to me is that what it basically does is put the pesticides that are able to be used in line with the federal codes. So there was some discrepancy between the state code and federal codes. So they have, what they are saying is they have no objection to this, to the changes in this. And some of our questions were things like if we had a specific issue where we had some pest issue of some kind that required a pesticide that went outside the listed appropriate ones, would that be possible? How does this curtail the work of DPW in the schools? And what the law says is that in that case, you have to go to the Board of Health to ascertain, and they would have to ascertain whether that pesticide would be necessary in this context. The Board of Health did a little bit of research on their own on what our integrated pest management programs are. And they had some questions. It was not at all clear. There does seem to be a contract with the pest management agency for the schools, but it wasn't at all clear to them what was happening. So what they're requesting is that we write a joint memo to DPW with these questions, that all details be provided as to the existing contract with the city's pest management company in charge of overseeing the IPM or integrated pest management plans for each of the schools. They want all sorts of details, materials used, cost, frequency, and then a full review of the school IPM plans to be performed to ensure that the best management practices are included to reflect the philosophy of least harm to staff, students, visitors, and the environment. So they would like us to co-author, to sign a memo together with them to the DPW to get this information. They don't want to sign off on this bill in an official way until they understand how it would impact our schools. And they don't feel that they have the information to do that at this point.
Can you tell me what the timeline is on this? Like, what is the expectation to get this information from a DPW that is overworked and with a lot on their plate? Like, is this something that has to be done in a couple of weeks? And I'm asking the timeline of the bill as well.
The bill, it's almost like we're almost past, I don't know I don't know the timeline for the bill.
Okay, because I thought it was coming up soon.
I think it may be. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But I think what this question about the bill has started is a question about what exactly our pest management program is. And what we're doing, what we're paying for, and how it's being managed. So I think, I don't know if this is something that requires a vote, but they would like us to sign off, to co-author a memo with them to get this information.
We should vote on that, but to Melissa's point, I think that it's good to know, these are all good questions, and we should know these things. And as far as how they relate to whether we're going to support the bill or not is not the secondary. It'd be good to know this stuff.
Right, I think that's what they did some research and they wanted more information about what we're doing here in the city.
It sounds like if the bill is really just bringing mass law in line with federal law.
That's how it was explained to me.
But if the reality is, if there's any exception to it, it goes to our local Board of Health, then it's good to know all of this stuff. So I would make a motion that we authorize Laura to help draft a letter with the Board of Health to request this information from you.
Second.
There you go. So again, I'm just gonna express my concern. I don't know what the turnaround time is for getting information from them. I just don't want to frustrate them, but I agree it's a very important topic. But it sounds like they want a lot of detail just by what you said. So I just want to express my concern for putting that pressure on them if this is something that's imminent.
Hopefully they have a procedural a manual of their procedures.
That they can just turn
Oh,
on, right,
right.
yeah.
Right, that would be great.
Yeah.
We had to carry, what I'm trying to remember what they're called, but basically information sheets on every material we use in CAD.
It was the second thing she said, though. I forget what it was. The
A
second.
full review of the school IPM plans to be performed. To
Yeah,
ensure that
so if that's already in a book, that's great, but if that's something they have to develop. That's a big
Well,
problem.
it's something that they have to have anyway, right?
I don't
Like,
know.
we have to have a school IPM plan.
But
I think that's
Right.
essentially what we're saying, is like,
What's the plan?
we need to have that anyway, and if we don't have it, then we should.
We should, but I'm making sure that we don't have to have it done by, say, 2 weeks, if that's when the bill's
I
getting
don't think
done.
so.
That's my only
If we miss the,
concern.
miss the deadline for the bill, miss the bill.
Yeah.
Right.
the
If
work
not,
needs to
we'll
be
get the thing
Right,
done.
I
Yeah,
think it's been
exactly.
detached. My sense is that this is now being a
Okay.
little bit detached from the bill. and
Okay.
more
Yeah,
about-
I would suggest that the letter not even mention the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Just ask for this information.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Lynn?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Is there anything we need to discuss before we? Okay.
I would just like, at a future meeting, I emailed Ben about this. There's some program in the O'Malley Academy related to life sciences that was being offered to some students, not others, based on how they identified as a gender. And so just like a little follow-up as to, why, and
It's a program we're doing with Action in quite some time, so I'll have Action and O'Malley be able to talk about this there.
Anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, Lynn?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
We're adjourned. Thank you very
Have you
much.
seen it?
See you all soon.